All right, welcome to the Darien Sewer Commission regular meeting of Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. We're calling the meeting to order at 4:31 p.m. In person in room 206 at Town Hall. First item on the agenda is to approve our minutes from March 27th. How's my brain? March 7th.
Yes, I unfortunately see two errors.
Well, unfortunately, I like to correct things.
Okay.
Think
Well,
positive thoughts.
On item number 4 on page 2 of 3,
Okay.
the bottom motion passed 3-2 with Mr. Hill and Ms. Cameron abstaining. No, we voted against the motion.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought that too. I voted no.
Cameron,
In fact, I voted wholeheartedly against the motion.
I think that means Hill and Cameron voting no.
Yeah, not abstaining.
Yeah.
And then on number 8, 3 of 3,
Okay.
where it says motion passed 4-1 with Mr. Hill abstaining. Again, I voted wholeheartedly against the motion. And also in number 8, where we're talking, the commission reserves the right to charge applicant for technical review. And then later on, talks about peer reviewed. I would like to have, after it says technical review, in parentheses saying peer review, so that we know when they change terms that it's the same thing.
Which item was that?
On number 8, the second paragraph,
First line.
And what did
commission
Yeah,
reserves the
okay.
right
and what did you want to do?
That's language.
just to add in parentheses peer review after technical review, just so that way the two terms become interchangeable. Because later on it does say the commission pondered units, 6 units plus would need to be peer reviewed, so that's, or you could,
Peer review.
just so that someone just from the outside reading it would
Okay.
understand the change in terminology, that they're both the same, refer to the same thing.
Sounds good. Any other edits to the minutes? Did you get those edits, Darren?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion
Peter
Peter
make a
makes a
motion
motion
to approve the
to
minutes
approve the minutes?
with correction.
Okay.
No.
Susan
Second that.
seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's 4-0. Minutes passed. All righty. Item number 3, 7 Sedgwick Avenue Residential Development, third-party review, discussion, and action. How would you like to proceed, Mr. Gentile?
Well, I think we'll start with making sure you all had a chance to look at the memo from Arcadis
Yes.
Yes.
and the findings that were made, determinations that were made, and their final conclusions at the end. Make sure we all understand what they've come up with.
Is someone here to address any questions
From
our
where?
case?
No.
No.
Didn't think that was necessary, but
So
I'm sorry,
I-
I did make an assumption
And you
there.
got my email of March 20th with my questions. Craig asked all of us to give you comments and questions, and I sent some in on March 20th. Craig sent some to you right away.
Yeah.
You received those? And did you forward those to Arcadis?
I did and I did not.
You didn't, you did not. You received them, but you never gave it to
Yes,
Arcadis.
I honestly, I was distracted. So I do apologize for that.
Okay, so then I guess the questions won't get answered?
They will, but it won't be at this meeting.
Okay.
So if I'm reading this right, and I didn't get a chance to go back and look at the applicant's engineer's study, but they were dividing the MGD by 18 as opposed to 24?
That's correct. as
That's
I
correct.
read Arcadis's report.
And I'm just befuddled at the vast array of ways to
Evaluate.
skin a cat, in other way, or to evaluate the system, and it just seems like, okay, it seems like it becomes a moving target, like which evaluation do we use? It kind of becomes a little concerning.
You can choose which evaluation you want to go with.
Well,
You're gonna.
in my estimation,
Okay.
it was done incorrectly 3 times by the applicant's engineer, and it has been done correctly by Arcadis.
Okay, the one part of what Arcadis' thing is, they're telling us that it's a cured-in-place lining that's 20 years old, and it's only a 1/4 inch thick. That
The-
sounds a little off. To me, I could be wrong, but it sounds off in that big of a pipe.
It's not off.
It's not.
That's all it is?
We had a piece, actually, we measured it in the office with the chairman there while we did it.
And then my other question is, what's the life expectancy of something that's 20 years old, 20 to 25 years old already?
It has the same life expectancy as a PVC pipe.
Nobody can get it.
Okay?
It was lined, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, right.
So
More than
there-
22 years ago, according to Mr. Ostefine's
So we
testimony.
wouldn't have a,
I went back and watched all of the meetings today. So I do have more questions just then. Did staff actually relay our questions as requested to
That was my
the peer reviewer, and they did not? So,
And I apologize for that. I'm looking at your email right now, and now I know why I didn't forward it.
oh,
I-
well,
it-
you'll
It got in the back
tell
of
me
it.
why.
It got stuck on the back of my
Oh.
stuff here.
Maybe
It's not that I
thought-
didn't do it on purpose. That was
Well, I
not
thought
the
maybe
intent.
you had answers. So you felt it wasn't necessary to
No,
send it to
no,
Arcadis.
if you wanted me to forward it to Arcadis, that's what I've done, and I just
And
didn't.
did you
do that.
forward Craig's to Arcadis?
I did. I
Okay.
did. I didn't get anything back from them.
And they sent back, everybody got back answers to all of his questions? He had quite a few.
I haven't seen
No,
anything besides
haven't
this
got anything
report.
back.
Okay.
I can tell you that when we started collecting the questions on this and started the email conversations back and forth, and we brought up the concerns of what was going on in that presence, putting the questions like that together, I was out of the loop a little bit, and then being brought back in, I did not follow through and send those back.
I only sent them to you after the warning, which was well-founded from my past land
Mhm.
use experience.
Yep.
I only sent them to you.
Now, I will say it was before, I generated my questions after our meeting a month ago, and before we received the technical peer review from Arcadis.
Yep.
That effectively made moot many of the concerns or questions or thoughts that I had, since Arcadis has found there is capacity in the system downstream of the project site. So we aren't on a bubble, so to speak, where we have to think about what we do in such a case.
I happen to agree with you on that part, but that's not why they weren't forwarded.
Yeah.
You reviewed Arcadis, right?
The report?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Were you convinced by the report?
That there's capacity?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
And I go back to the meetings 4 months ago when I said we had capacity in that line.
Because you had never experienced problems with it in your tenure.
And I knew what some of the incidental flows were that were coming through there, instantaneous
Okay.
flows. Nothing to raise a red flag in our area right now.
So I think the part of the problem here was a process. And I elected to allow the applicant to speak twice without forewarning of getting on the agenda and without information presented. I was also unaware, even up through the last meeting, that they had a pending planning and zoning application. Is there anything we could do with process in the future to make this a little more straightforward?
You know, it's, it became more difficult in managing the questions to get them to Arcadis, I think, and valid concerns that you folks had with the system, of course. Trying to gather your questions was hard, I guess is a good way to put it. And then trying to convey them to Arcadis was even harder. But then getting this report back that had kind of, if you want to say, pushed the pendulum in the other direction with regards to our capacity and your concerns and right concerns, just made it very difficult to manage this project right now, as far as getting proper questions to the proper people to get the proper answer to questions that some of them, as you said, after reading the report, were no longer valid or a concern.
Or of a critical nature.
Yeah.
What do we do for the next time this happens, the next?
Well, I think the most important thing is for me to make sure we vet the projects before they get to you. I think in making sure that you're getting good information to make decisions or put questions forward through staff to the third party or to us if we're doing the review or the initial review. I think that's important.
So I guess in terms of, one thing that would help is you guys having sufficient time to look at something before it hits our agenda, especially for a larger development project. I know the way EPC does it is to at least submit an application, you do so a week ahead of a meeting, and all they do at that first meeting is say, we've received this application, here's a broad overview, now we're going to look at it over the next month. And then P&Z doesn't really do it that way. They say, get it in a month ahead of time, staff will vet it and review it and make its referrals before it goes up before P&Z for review. Do you think there's a time frame thing here that, like, how much time do you think is appropriate for you guys to have to vet an application before it's on the agenda?
Well, I think the initial meetings with these folks, I think something that Darren was trying to put out was to make you aware of the development that was coming out. And I think it transformed itself into a presentation, if you will, or the drain. And I think that can't happen without us at least vetting that information before it goes to you.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
So there might just be a section on the agenda that clearly just said, received this, or something.
Listen,
For a heads up.
I don't have a problem, I don't think you folks have in the past, to allow the developer to come in and just talk about his project a little bit, and maybe even some guidance from the commission on any of that. But, I've seen in the past where other commissions or other regulatory bodies don't like to hear about them until it's official, until they're ready to hear. Did you have
Well,
something?
yes, that was the June meeting, our first meeting, where this was discussed. And Bob said, I'm looking for bottlenecks. Reese said, you gotta go to the Stony Brook pump station. Darren said, this is a very deep line VCP pipe that was lined more than 22 years ago, and we expect issues. Then comes January 2023, Mr. Simulidis comes in and says the Mechanic Street main tie-in has capacity, but the choke point is just downstream under the bridge where 4 sewer sheds come together. The problem is even with dry weather flow. Even if you take out Leroy Upper and I&I, it's still undersized. Rough numbers, 3.4 is the existing flow, 2.6 is capacity. Now, come March, Kurt Lowenstein says 1.4 is current capacity. I can see how you can have the flow numbers go up and down, and you put in a 4, or you put in a .08, or you put in 24 hours. But the capacity's got to be a set number. So which is it?
I don't have the notes that you have, so I don't
I
recall
watched
those
all the
things. Yeah,
meetings.
I'm sure you do.
Again
So,
today.
no,
I need to sit up straighter.
When we're talking about capacity of a line, we're
Yeah.
talking about an engineer's analysis of pipe condition, slope, size, even.
Same pipe though, right?
It's the same pipe.
Well, so I remember when Mr. Semelides was presenting, he had no
January.
calculations with him,
It was in January.
and he had no calculations with him. He had
But
no
he had-
calculations to share with us. So he made statements, but he did not have calculations.
He had no report with him?
That's
I
my
wasn't at that
recollection.
meeting,
That's
so
my
I don't know.
recollection. We did not have calculations to look at. He did not submit calculations. He just said, I did some calculations, and this is what they show. And then we finally got the calculations from Mr. Lowenstein at the second meeting, and they were kind of simple Manning's-End calculations, and that's what they took. The first time, they took a 24-hour number, tried to make it an instantaneous number, took all flow from the 24-hour number and multiplied it by 4, including the I&I flow. That's when I said, I don't think that's right. Why don't you get the instantaneous flow? Third meeting, they had the instantaneous flow and a report now for the first time at the third meeting. And that's when we asked for the peer review, and the peer review found that to convert from day to instantaneous, they divided by 18 hours instead of by 24 hours. So I believe it was incorrectly done the first 3 times, and it is now correctly done.
Okay, but let's go back to these numbers that he gave us. 2.6 was the capacity, right? That's how much you can put into it?
I don't, again,
I'm
I
not-
don't,
I'm not
I don't,
asking-
I don't recall what he said at the first
I'm
meeting.
not asking you to evaluate the number, just what is capacity? How much
Yeah.
you can fit into the pipe?
It is, yes, and it's a factor of diameter, slope, and roughness.
Okay.
So,
the first guy says 2.6. March, Mr. Lowenstein comes in and says 1.4, which is less.
but I never
So
saw the
what-
calculations the first time.
So, but he went from there being more capacity to less capacity in March.
I would
think,
ha- I don't
think
have
he's
that.
talking about the flow that's in the pipe. That's what he started to
No,
bring
they
down.
were
No,
talking
it's-
about capacity.
Because the,
So
have
what
the
is,
two
what
reports.
is the, one of the things I asked was to have
Problem.
the same numbers to
Yeah,
look at
exactly.
for
So you have to get the
each
same point.
engineer.
There you're talking
I
about-
wanted to see, because the first report I looked at, there was one way of looking at numbers, and then there was a different way of looking at numbers, that's what I wrote. And so I asked that it be made comparable. Right, a page in Land Tech submission in January included the comment for study point number 2, Town of Darien sewer system is under capacity today, exclamation point. The submission in February concludes that study point 2 is currently at capacity and their development will put it over. The revision of opinion seemed to have something to do with 5-minute peak flow data. I'm having difficulty comparing the numbers because they report them so differently. Would they please use the format for the study point data from the submission in January and apply the revised data from February? What is it that Arcadis has done? I don't know if they've used any of those. What are they saying is that flow number, or the capacity number?
so Arcadis,
18 to 24.
yeah, so Arcadis, I'm trying to get the old report here, which I thought I brought. I don't have my thing here. Oh,
Is that the same as metered instantaneous flow? No, I'm looking for capacity of the pipe.
So you're looking at page 404.
Over 24 hours, not 18.
Those are the flow numbers.
Those are flows. I'm
Yeah.
talking about capacity. How much can go
Well,
in
that
the pipe?
depends
so
on-
page
that
404,
increases
up top, it
if
gives
your
you the
hours
capacity.
increase. If you go from 18 to 24 and you have the
That's-
same flow,
yeah.
you get more capacity.
Well,
But
the
we're not
flow
doing
goes
that.
down, which yields excess
Because your,
capacity.
your
Um,
average flow is lower.
If I had, do you have the old report, the report from we got from last time? Because I can look at the numbers.
No,
I
I
thought I
haven't.
had it, and I don't have it.
I might. I brought a random sampling of things.
This is the March 7th meeting.
Do any of you use this methodology, SSOAP? The EPA sanitary
Well,
sewer
for
overlay
the-
analysis.
What they're doing is what they're doing is a very simple Manning's equation. And if you have slope and diameter and roughness, you can complete Manning's equation. It doesn't
I'm
require a
looking
huge
for
document.
capacity. Don't know about
Again, I'm
Manning.
just looking for the Land Tech report that
Well,
we
look,
had
I,
last
I,
time. Do you
and
have that?
I thought I had asked this, but obviously I
No.
didn't because
I don't have it.
Arcadis didn't deal with it. But I was, I was and am still
I had it.
concerned of the confluence in the post road of the 51,000 new gallons of water that are gonna be injected in the system and what the capacity is down there
That's
and
poor.
how much is left over. That, number one, and then my other issue that I've mentioned numerous times is the pumping on off hours, holding the water and pumping off hours to conserve capacity in the pipe. And it seems to be, do I have to insist that that is in this? I really thought I did.
Well, we looked
But
at the.
I'm missing something
We looked
here.
at the numbers for development for 7 Sedgwick at 25,000 gallons. And we looked at the CFS of .03,
That's 4.
multiplied it by 2, and the increase at Corbin for that development is .06 CFS. So I did the math,
So you're saying we're good?
and we're good.
Okay,
And I didn't have to have Arcadis do that. I had their report, I had the flows coming off of 7 Sedgwick, I had the increases, I knew what they were. I did the initial review for Corbin when they came through.
okay.
One of the reasons we moved them down to Leroy was because we had problems, or we had indications of surcharging at the Corbin and Post Road. So we took a lot of the flow out of that and
And
moved
sent
it
on the
down
parallel
about 300
pipe,
feet
yes.
to a larger pipe. So we are in good condition, in good shape down there. That's why we did it.
That's in already, that pipe?
Not yet,
Okay,
not yet, but it'll need to be put in and made connected before they can put those other buildings online. The south corner, if you will,
yeah.
by the
post-
bank
the
and.
Post office around the corner of the Bank of America.
Correct. All of that flow needs to go down to Leroy.
Okay,
Does
So I
all
did
end
look
up-
into it, I did hear you, I did look into it.
Okay,
I
but
didn't
I
need
never-
Arcadis to do that,
I
I
didn't-
had done it originally.
I'm sorry, I never heard the response.
That's all right, you had asked the last meeting, and I didn't have the numbers yet.
Okay, and the off-hour pumping?
You need to talk to me about where you'd like to see that done, because I've never seen it done in Stanford or Darien, and that's the only two places I've worked.
And I
I've
do.
heard about it, but I've never seen it done.
Land Tech has, what, Westport or Wilton or someplace, they have a project where they are doing that,
I-
according to
So in
some
terms of
testimony.
this particular project that we are discussing at the moment, although we're discussing kind of policy at the same time,
No, I've mentioned the off-hour pumping at least 3 times when this project
can I
is being.
finish my sentence?
Oh,
That it's about off-hour pumping in
Okay.
response to your question?
sure.
Okay, thank you. This particular project is in a flood zone. So I have a question about introducing a mechanical control when you don't need one, and whether or not it makes sense to have that sewage stored with those pumps, depending on the pumps, in that flood zone. So gravity is always your friend because it never fails. But, and if it was closer, if there was an indication that that would make a difference or made sense, I'd consider it. I'm not against it. I just think there's other things to think about when thinking about it.
Okay, but at the same time, we've had SSOs there, which have been contributed to by fog.
Yes,
More units create more fog, no way around it.
I suppose incrementally, yes, but my understanding of the likelihood of that grease is coming from upstream restaurants, both in Good Wives and at the DOT rest area. Because they drive orders of magnitude more fog than,
They do, I'm not saying they don't do
Than
more,
around
but I'm
the
saying that it's a concern, plus I just think saving the pipe capacity, I don't know. That's my opinion, and I didn't think it was addressed, so I'm voicing my opinion again.
sure.
Because I would want either Ed or Arcadius to give their opinion.
Okay,
I don't think that's an unfair request. Because I've said it for when they were when the people were in here for Thorndale Circle, and I've said it when they were in here, when they presented their project for 7 Sedgwick. I don't wanna start, hearing that you never said it, so I've said it, so the ball has to
I
start
don't think
somewhere.
anybody said that you didn't say it.
But it was never,
Yes, we don't have a
I
specific.
think it was a consideration when we thought there was an issue with the line and the capacity. I think the report and, to be honest with you, the statement that, if we have gravity, we want to use gravity as best we can. Nothing to say that we're not going to run into future developments down this area that are going to require us to rethink that position on that exact thing. But it's not totally out of the realm of being included in our system anywhere, but at this location, it doesn't seem like it's a feasible solution to what you would perceive to be a problem. I don't think there's a problem with that line. I think we did a lot of heavy lifting for removal of fog with the grease and all, the grease that had been built up in that line. We spent a lot of time in that line, and with that, we've gotten some really good results with regards to the lack of SSOs out there.
Well, that was the secondary concern. The real concern is saving the pipe capacity, is pumping on off hours when there isn't the flow that, there is during the daytime. The diurnal flow at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
But I
think-
guess the question is, on a one-off basis, can we make that requirement if there's, I'm going to believe the Arcadis report, if there's plenty of capacity in the system.
Well, I'm not thinking it's going to be a one-off.
Yeah,
I'm thinking it's
yeah.
starting now and going,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Which is more of a policy discussion than a, let's do it
Yeah.
this first time question.
Okay, then if it's a policy discussion, again, why wasn't it brought up that way the first time I mentioned it?
I don't know. I don't think I was in the room the first time you mentioned it.
Okay.
What-
Obviously, I'm doing something wrong, because between that and the using projected billing methods, all of a sudden, I said it 3 times, and now all of a sudden, we need to put it on the agenda for policy. So obviously now, I just need to start putting all kinds of things on the agenda, because it all is policy. And it seems like my statements at times are getting left as just my statements and my ranting and going nowhere.
Well, that shouldn't be the case.
That's what I feel like from those 2 subjects.
Okay.
I think from your statements and your points of view, I think to get from a statement to a policy, there needs to be discussion. And I think the commissioners have to find a spot on the agenda to do it. So if there's stuff you want us to add to the agenda, you making a statement said, Darren, Ed, could we put that on the agenda as an item to discuss next week or next month, and then we'll put it on it. We may ask you to come back with some information that we can put in the packet, but we'll definitely put it on the agenda.
Well, I definitely think we need to come up with something before the next application, right? We need to have some kind of policy in place.
Yeah, how we're gonna
for
manage these
How we're gonna
applications
manage these things.
in the
This is
future.
nuts. This back and forth is really nuts. And okay, so I see, I found this capacity. So Arcadis doesn't give you an overall number, they give you 2 numbers. The pipe capacity at study point 1 is 1.47. That kind of matches Kurt Lowenstein's number of 1.4. And study point 2, they say it's 2.83, which kind of matches the rough number for Mr. Simulidis of 2.6. So which is it? Do you
The
take
two-
the
so-
one that's the biggest or the lowest or the?
You take the one that's right. So when,
I don't think we have a right.
we do, because when Land Tech prepared these numbers,
Yeah.
they used a different pipe roughness, the N, based on their thought that it was a concrete pipe. It's not a concrete pipe, it's a lined pipe, which is a smoother condition. When Land Tech used their numbers for the top line, they used a 12-inch pipe, but the pipe had been lined, so the inside of the pipe got a little bit smaller.
Yes, I saw that when I watched the movie The Line.
So,
I heard
so the calculations presented by Arcadis take into effect, both in roughness and in diameter, it's a lined pipe. So when you put different numbers into the equation, you get different numbers out of the equation. That's why the numbers vary.
And I'm just still, I'm not sure I can trust Arcadis has it right. That's where I'm coming out. I'm like, there's just so many different ways. Why is I've
This
seen
is
Land
not,
Tech.
this is not like, I'm using a different methodology. To me, this is right and wrong.
Well, could Mr. Simulidis come up and we could ask him a few questions? Is that
So
correct?
are you ready to proceed with an applicant presentation?
Or discussion.
What's that? What's that?
Or discussion.
Yeah.
Well, to question some of the,
Yeah.
Land Tech came before me on both EPC and P&Z at least 150 times. They've always done a top notch. This isn't somebody from East Overshoe saying, which we also saw, this stormwater will work. They're a reputable firm. So why are they
Mr.
using
Sumolitis,
18 hours? Why are they
What's your summary?
doing different things?
Well, let's let them
Can I just,
present and,
before Andy
Safety.
speaks, can I
Sure.
just make a few comments?
Please.
For the record, Robert Maslin, I'm the attorney on this. we were here in two different sequences. The first was like a year ago,
June.
when we had an application pending at Planning and Zoning. And the way that works is the Planning and Zoning staff refers applications out to the various departments. So it's by referral. So that's why this is not an application directed to the Sewer Commission. The comments we received from staff the first time around included a question and a concern about backups at Mechanic Street, somewhere in that line that backed up and overflowed in front of this site. So that's a pretty significant comment. And among other things, we decided to pull the application so we could get a handle on this Sewer Commission question or the staff question. And it just took a long time. And along the way, we did not have sound actual measurements from the Arcadis report initially. And then when we did get it, it came from the I&I report, as I understand. And then later on, those numbers were supplemented by actual flow data, particularly peak flow data, that was not in the Arcadis report initially. So there's kind of a progression of getting some information, some more information, then finally getting the instantaneous peak flow information from actual measurements. And so while one way to look at this is to say that while one methodology was wrong and the other one was correct, I think a better way to put it is one was based on less than very detailed, accurate, up-to-date information, and once that information was obtained and analyzed, I think it's fair to say, and Andy can explain this a little better, but I think what happened was Land-Tech took a conservative approach, very conservative. And then when Arcadis looked at it, they had more information. For example, the question about the sleeve. Land-Tech did the report without the sleeve, which gives you a different N number. I'm treading on eggs here because I don't know anything more about an N number than it has an N in it.
Well, I guess, do you want
But
to
the
set the
whole
stage here
idea
and have
was,
Mr.
we then end up with much more accurate information, and it's kind of a progression, not so much a question, somebody did it wrong and then somebody else did it right. As far as process, this has been a problem that kind of goes back, not often, but many years with old subdivisions that I was involved in. I think Darren was involved in one before he even worked for the town, where we'd come to the commission with questions about a sewer main extension, and every time we come, it's a different response. And it's kind of hard to work with a moving target. So maybe a good idea is to come up with a process. You know, if there's a significant development that's pending before another agency, you get the referral. Okay, this is what we need. This is how we're going to do this. And then the applicant knows. And you know, so we're not going around in circles trying to shoot at a moving target. And I think it's a very good suggestion for the future. But let me let Andy answer Susan's technical questions.
Good evening or afternoon. Andy Sumalides, Principal and Professional Engineer with Land-Tech, for the record. I just want to start off by apologizing a little bit about the process. We typically don't like to operate this way either, of not having all the information and continuously coming back before boards and commissions and kind of asking questions. We like to come up with a succinct full package and then come forward with you guys. So I think part of the discrepancies is the information Arcadis had versus what we had, and how we looked at the information and not asking certain questions. When we got the data dump with the 5-minute interval, it was, and I don't know if any of you've seen it, it's an Excel spreadsheet with not a lot of detailed information, just a whole bunch of numbers and a 1 million gallons per day number at the end to make the conversions. So in other instances, we've converted that with an 18-hour peak. We should have asked Arcadis, is it proper to use an 18-hour peak or a 24-hour peak with that data that we received? We've done it both ways in numerous towns. So that was the discrepancy in the 18 and the 24. We should have asked Arcadis about that data and what that data.
Is 18 a commonly used variable?
It is to take out the midnight to 6 a.m. flows.
Oh, okay, so it gives you a more realistic number.
The flow data is on a 5-minute interval. That flow meter ran 24 hours a day for 2 months. And it was simply reported, this is the flow at this 5 minutes, this is the flow at this 5 minutes, this is the flow at this 5 minutes. They could have just wrote CFS at the end. They happened to write MGD. It was just a way to report the number. So
We should convert it as a 24 hour.
yes, when you do the 18-hour version, you are trying to find base groundwater flow, because that's the only thing flowing at night, right? Generally in a residential area, the only thing flowing between whatever, 11 at night and 5 in the morning is kind of your groundwater baseline. So there are times that you might use that type of division when you're trying to isolate these different flows. But this was just a meter, like your water meter, clicking every 5 minutes. So there's no need to make that number more conservative. It ran for 2 months. It captured 3 rainfall events greater than an inch in depth. And that was the highest number recorded across that entire 2 months.
Agreed. So I think the other discrepancy was the pipe capacity, the Mannings that we used, again, was an RCP pipe. Again, our apologies for, it sounded like it was mentioned early on in June with our previous engineer here from Landtech, who was no longer with us. So that's, again, our apologies for not having that information or knowing that this pipe was indeed lined. That obviously changed the equation, changes the diameter of the pipe. And I think that's what the simple math here is. It's not a methodology, it's plugging in the right numbers into that equation. And we had the wrong numbers, and Arcadis used the right numbers. So I think those are the two. I mean, I don't want to get into the peak flow a little bit. I mean, they used a 5.7, industry standards 4. I mean, I don't know if Craig has any thoughts on that, but they used the chart from the TR16. We typically don't use that chart. We use a peak of 4, but they used that 5.7, which is actually more conservative peaking factor, to come up with this.
Yeah,
So
that one I would call a methodology.
yeah,
difference.
that's right.
Plenty of engineers use the other chart. They chose to use a more conservative chart.
Correct.
So
I would say
before-
that bit was a methodology question.
Right. But the balance of it is
But did you do your own flow metering?
no.
Where did you get the data from before Arcadis gave you data? In order to come up
From
with an evaluation?
From their report.
I'm sorry, I thought you didn't have Arcadis information. You only
We
had,
had-
I don't know what, to
Right,
do
we-
your
they-
first report on.
They published a report with peak flows, peak, I think it was daily,
Maximum daily flow.
maximum daily, maximum, and the peak 1 hour maybe they had? I don't remember, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. But they had some numbers in a report that they used. And then they had additional data not published in the report.
I get it, okay.
That then was presented to us later, that then we compiled our latest report with, which is more accurate information when you're doing the 5-minute
They
interval.
received the 5-minute flow data
Right.
between the second and third most recent meeting.
Correct. So that's why you saw a couple of renditions of the report. I think it's, as we got additional data or requested it, that's what changed the numbers.
If this, okay, I have no more questions for you. I have
Okay.
a couple questions for staff.
Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, before
Yeah.
Andy sits down, do we have any more questions for the applicant's engineer? Bob, nothing? Peter,
No?
nothing? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You had questions
do.
for staff?
Are there any other properties with the right to hook up but are not hooked up in the meter areas feeding into study point 2?
Not that we're aware of. We have a pretty comprehensive, we did a background check for the project at Parklands, and we found that there were a few. But for the most part, other than expanding the sewers, there may be some one-offs or some isolated ones. But I will go back and check again. I couldn't find any.
Okay. And remember
Susan,
that-
just to let you know, I did read your statement because I got up and I went and looked at our map. I said, she's asking a good question, I should know this, but, yeah, I will definitely go, I'll go back and I'll check again.
So this area was identified by you for Arcadis to look at, correct? When they first came in and they wanted, we didn't look at everything. There's a little diagram that says the ones they're not going to look at and the ones they're going to look at. And we had a map at one point where there were little red dots and little green dots and yellow dots. And these two are red dots, is that correct? These were the two that were on that map that were red, which meant there was
There were
issues.
meters put at these locations. Those were the, I don't think the red dots, but they were red boxes, but there were other
No,
red
no,
dots.
no, they were red dots on, and there was
Another,
each of them.
yeah, absolutely, there was another map that showed red dots, but they were over in the Goodwives, Mechanic, Sedgwick intersection area where we had SSOs. And those are the ones that have been reported since 2017, 2018, coming forward, which highlighted us taking on this study and taking on these construction.
These flows don't go there?
These flows come from there. This project is at that intersection.
So these flows are going from the red dot to a yellow dot or a green dot?
To the point of metering, right? Study point number 1 and study point number 2.
But you identified this area as having issues, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, but Arcadis doesn't seem to think we have any capacity issues.
We did a very, very heavy cleaning of that line after we had reported multiple SSOs in that location at very, very low rainstorm events.
That was
And
a couple
sin-
years ago, right?
And since then have had none. So now we go back to, okay, now the pipe is not like this, it's back to its original size, lined as it was, producing capacity that it should have, based on the Manning's equation that you look at. So she went
we
back and
had-
checked
when
that
we
whole
started-
system.
Okay, let me just get the timeline right. When we started with Arcadis, that was before you cleaned it up?
We started with Arcadis just after we had cleaned it.
But you identified it because you weren't sure your cleaning was going to be effective?
Check and verify.
But now you're sure there's no problems over there?
We haven't had any, and we've had multiple rainstorm events that we used to have problems with.
So what are we going to move forward with when we have Arcadis do work? It's somewhere else?
We still
In
have.
phase 2 and phase 3?
We have sewer sheds. Well, phase 2 is
Not that one.
Mansfield, Brookside.
Right. found
There's
that.
phase 3, there are 2 other locations that reported high INI. We will go after those and attack those.
That's Mansfield Avenue Lower, Mechanic Street, and Leroy Avenue Upper, and Corbin Drive.
Correct, and they could be from pipelining to manhole lining to, any manholes replacements, watertight manholes in 100-year flood zones, things like that. That's what phase 2 is actually incorporating.
Well, when you look at the Arcadis document for the rehabilitation phases, they talk about areas in addition to work.
Yes.
That's all they're talking about on this page.
Yeah, phase 2 is Stony Brook and Mansfield Avenue Upper, and there's gonna be 15,514 feet of pipe rehabilitation and 134 manhole rehabilitations during that phase.
And the estimated infiltration's 0.63 CFS.
This is like well, that was from my email, but yeah, this is 400,000 gallons per day. Yeah.
That was in red. All
Trying
right.
to find the number. Is this it? Do you have any more questions for staff, Susan?
No. I find it all very confusing that there's so many different ways to look at this.
Mr. Hill, do you have any questions for staff?
I asked mine.
Okay. Mr. Nichol, do you have any questions for staff?
No, not at all.
Okay. Question on the Mechanic Street sewer, since we've had grease problems there before, is that on a regular list of, I know like in reading the CMON report, right, there's certain pipes that are recommended for 10 years versus 5 years versus, kind of red flag areas that might be more frequently. Do we know what the schedule is for inspecting that pipe and confirming it's still in good condition?
We do it on a more than regular basis, especially that location, some of the pipes along the Boston Post Road, particularly in the area where there are restaurants. And we have fog reports that aren't completed, or we've been finding that some of the equipment hasn't been completely up to speed and working all the time.
So
those type of things.
there's our fog maintenance program to confirm that property owners are
And that
complying
kind
with
of
that.
stuff, but Steve and the crew, they know where to go all the time. They've been highlighting these areas for a while.
Yeah.
After we cleaned it, we put them on a more regular schedule to see what the reaction would be after we did clean the pipe. So we do take a look at that, but we're also using Anthony from our office to go into these restaurants on a more regular basis to make sure that they're functioning, their oil recovery and
And
grease recovery functions
Do
are
we have our
being followed.
own camera? Like, are we able to do our own video scoping?
We have a
on
pole,
camera?
we have a pole camera, we have a push camera that we could put down, and we have an on-call guy that we actually two of them that we call anytime. They're generally here within a day or two to take a look at stuff.
And I guess, are there these, what I'll call areas that have experienced problems in the past? Do we have them on a regular cycle to camera?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, it's, some of the areas are seasonally driven, if you will. A good location would have been over by Lake Drive. We have the, what's the facility at the end of the road? The summer facility there.
Middlesex?
Middlesex Swim Club.
During the summertime, we are always out there checking that line because of the grease that we find in it. Can't generally come from any other places.
Interesting.
So that one is on their list for spring,
Regular
summer, fall.
inspection. Spring,
Not so much during the winter.
All right.
And I think in that CMOM report, there's a list, they put together a list of all of the locations that were highly likely to clog if we did nothing. More regularly, they require the camera work and make sure we clean it. And we sometimes just go out and we jet it and then clean it and check on it with the camera to make sure it's still flowing and functioning properly.
Mr. Semmelidis, actually, I do have one more question for you, if you could. So you have clearly reviewed the Arcadis technical peer review. Do you agree with the findings of the
We
Arcadis
find it
technical?
acceptable, yes.
Yeah. Would you say that the findings in the Arcadis report are more accurate based on better data than the findings in your report?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, so any other questions or discussions on this application? Not an application, referral. So we have a referral, I guess, from planning and zoning. And it's the responsibility of, I guess, the Department of Public Works and you gentlemen to respond to that referral. It has been before us now 4 times. Is there a suggested action that you're looking for us to take at this point?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to seek a decision whether we can allow them to make the connection with their proposed development.
Okay. So we have a referral from planning and zoning. We have had 4 nights of discussion regarding this referral. I personally understand the facts. Would somebody like to make a motion as to the adequacy of the sewer system to accept the proposed development?
I guess that's me.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we accept the value of the Arcadis study, and that we've come to the conclusion, at least I have, that there is sufficient capacity to proceed forward with the construction.
Okay. Do I have a second on the motion? Allowing the motion to come to a vote. Is there any reason that you're uncomfortable making a second?
Yes, I'll make the motion up to the 2 study points, but I don't know what's downstream.
So you're,
I don't feel comfortable downstream. From your words, and I wrote them down,
what were my words?
back in June,
Okay.
verbatim. You want to make sure the downstream sewer system has the capacity to accommodate the increase in sewer influent.
Okay.
That goes an awful long way, the infrastructure, in my opinion. And I agree with you with that statement. And I don't think that that's been proven to me. I think it's been proven to study points 1 and 2, and I would vote for that, but not that the whole system is okay.
Well, I would just like to, can I comment here? Just
Sure.
Have you looked at that downstream?
I looked at it when we had the analysis done for Corbin,
Yeah?
when Baywater did their analysis,
Mhm. And what did that tell you?
and there was capacity in the lines.
Thank you.
There was capacity in the line, but they're putting in a whole separate line.
They're making a connection further downstream, eliminating flow in about 600 feet of pipe.
But there's no problem at the Stony Brook pump station to have all this additional flow going there. In a 500-year storm, or what's going to happen? Is it all going to pop? In a 25-year storm, is it all going to pop? I mean, what I got from reading this thing, this EPA sanitary sewer overflow thing, is that the RDII is really the issue.
Mhm.
And that's the issue in designing these systems. And we don't know if we're going to get rid of that. And the report shows that this is an area where there is a lot of infiltration.
That's why we're focused on it.
Right. But do we want to add additional flow at this point to an area where we know there are issues and we've already been sued over it? So that's my question, is how can we be assured that the system can handle additional flows?
We were sued for the number of SSOs that we had. But if you look at the list of SSOs that we had and the reason for those overflows, they weren't because the system was out of capacity. So like Mechanic Street, there was a grease problem and that caused overflows. The largest overflow we had, the most concerning one, was a break in a pipe by Danny Cycles. And that was a broken pipe that caused the overflow. So I don't recall the list, but I don't recall when you go through the data on the overflows, there was always in my recollection, a factor that occurred, a clog, a break, a pump failure, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't that our system is just under capacity and things were popping out. That's not
It's
why we were sued.
maintenance? Our maintenance was faulty?
You could argue that we weren't ahead of the maintenance on Mechanic Street. You could argue that we didn't video the line downstream of the Stony Brook Force Main before it broke. So you could argue that we weren't ahead of these things. That's fair.
But they're not, but no one is saying that we're under capacity at Stony Brook.
What's your recollection?
No. No. What they're saying is the I&I that's getting into our system is impacting the Stony Brook pump station, and the way it more function efficiently is to eliminate the I&I and to making sure that there is plenty of capacity, wet and dry conditions, is to remove the I&I in our system. And that's what we're doing.
But we haven't done it yet. But it doesn't really matter because we have capacity.
We have capacity. We definitely have capacity during dry conditions, but during certain rainstorm events, large rainstorm events, we're going to have manholes that pop.
We don't have capacity.
We
Okay.
will not have capacity during large rainstorm events.
But we have capacity at this location,
We
wet
do.
or dry,
We do.
even though it's underwater, so you can't really tell.
Well, we use meter flow readings for a 2-month interval during rain conditions, wet conditions, if you will, and we still have capacity in the line. And the increase coming off this site is 0.03 CFS. It's minimal. Minimal.
I mean, I'm sorry, I know you guys most of you are engineers, that means not a lot to me. It's like, okay, where do we go from 3.4 to 2.6 to 1.4 to 0.707? It's like, okay.
I like to relate it to the as a factor of the capacity of the pipe, right? So 0.03 or 0.04 CFS based on pipes that can handle 1.5 or 3 CFS. You get a factor of, is that 1% of the pipe, 2% of the pipe? that's how I tend to relate those numbers and kind of get my head around them, because they can sound just like numbers in a vacuum.
Yeah, like what's a trillion?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I still don't know, I still don't know. It's just, I can't put all these pieces together and have it doesn't come out to, we have issues.
Well, that's,
Have to work on them.
what this is similar to would be in a courtroom, if we were in a courtroom, you know, a jury listening to the evidence of the experts. And I guess we've heard, you know,
From 3 experts.
from 3 experts. Although I'm an engineer, I'm not an expert in this field. But I have been in courtrooms, you know, where I've listened to this, and somewhere along the line, I mean, if this were a case where a judge was sitting in, not in a jury, not a jury trial, but a judge was sitting in it, I mean, if he heard the testimony of the experts, you know, he'd probably, I'm not saying he would, but he'd probably go along with that.
Which
Because
one?
that's why they're expert witnesses.
Which expert?
Well, we have.
The conservative expert or
We have
the
Mr.
progressive expert?
We have Mr. Sonolides, who just said.
Well, why would he not say that?
He
This
agrees
is
with the
his
findings
applicant.
of the Arcadis
Because
report.
the
That's his
numbers
latest testimony.
changed because of
We have-
more data that he did not have. And he readily admitted that. Now, that's not, I don't know, that's, I mean, and I've done other types of engineering where, you know, I sat down and came up with this crazy number and I said, gee. And then, you know, went back and said, well, that's not right. And I had to go back and reformulate the whole thing and dig out more numbers. And all of a sudden, you know, the second time around, it started to make sense because I had used proper values that I hadn't used before. They may not have been available to me.
Let me give you a slightly relevant to this particular discussion.
All right.
Example, when we had Malone and McBroom here, and they were doing the study on the flooding, and they came up with maps that show Goodwife Shopping Center totally underwater, totally underwater. And Bob Steger got up and said, okay, that's fine that these numbers show that, but I can tell you it's never flooded. Now, it has flooded recently, but up until that point, you had Malone and McBroom showing the line into the stores.
But that's been changed.
Since Malone and McBroom did their reports, I don't
You-
think they
you-
changed it.
Yeah, so.
Bob, didn't you clean that pipe out?
Well, that's it. It's-
We
we're
were
talking
talking
about two different
groundwater.
things.
I'm just talking this.
So what happened was we, the Malone and McBroom study was used to change the FEMA maps. The FEMA maps from 2013 or 14 on showed Goodwives in a floodplain.
Right, Mother
and then
Nature
it
has
flooded.
now shown that Malone and McBroom was right, and
So
the fact that we never had
it
water
was
up
an
until
engineer that did
Yeah.
the right calculations, and we used those calculations.
But Bob Steger was also an engineer, and he was the one pointing out, hey, this has never happened, ever. And suddenly now it has happened. I don't know.
So anyway, in my mind, we have Mr. Sonolides saying the Arcadis values are correct. We, of course, have Arcadis saying their values are correct. Mr. Gentile, you've reviewed all the documentation and heard all the testimony. You are the superintendent of sewers. What is your opinion?
I think Arcadis has analyzed it to study point number 2 and has capacity. The system has capacity.
All right.
So perhaps the,
All right, I will second it. But we have to get this process down.
I agree.
To be much better, because this is nuts.
I agree.
Okay,
I do not like how this process has gone down.
not at all.
All right, we have a motion to accept the findings of the Arcadis report and allow the connection based on adequate sewer capacity. We have a second on that motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Not for me.
Okay, drum roll, please. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? All those abstaining? right? 301. Okay, hopefully that's not on the next agenda.
Let them do it.
Item number 4, Federal Realty Sewer Charge Rebate.
I had Penny put together a letter to the Sewer Commission, recapping, going back 3 years, to where the properties, 2 isolated properties were charged the minimum for 5 out of the 6 years. One of the years was a little bit higher, much higher, I'm sorry. These properties were demoed by Federal Realty in 2019, 2020, just as
November of 19.
19, and getting our record straight and getting us in the billing process just before COVID hit. I missed these. They got through me. I'll take full responsibility for this, but I want to let you know that, you know, in going back to try to set up our next item on the agenda, we came across these, and I thought it's only fair, as you commissioners do all the time, prevent a very transparent process that we have here. So we found these, and I felt that we need to go back and reimburse them the funds. So we presented this to you.
And item number 5 on the agenda, the next one, is about how to prorate billing in advance of an official bill year, right? Is that the idea behind number 5?
That's correct.
Okay, so we can dispense with number 4 as we've found some of these accounts in the past that were improperly billed, and get them billed properly. Anybody have questions for staff on the materials presented under item number 4?
Yeah, do you think there's any other accounts you need to audit to see if there's other issues out there?
We are
To be fair
scrubbing,
and-
we're gonna scrub the other 2 larger projects that have come through with multiple properties, and one being Baywater, the other one being Palmer's Market area. But I'm pretty confident that we have, because Palmer's had just come in for their disconnects, that we're okay there. Just want to check on Corbin and make sure there wasn't one that either we missed or that we're still billing. So I'd like to give you a definitive, yes, I'm very confident, but I'm not going to say that after
No,
what I found. and I
I'm
just
good.
want to
with
make sure
not-
we're going.
I'm good with you not being confident and thinking that you need to look.
Yeah.
That's a fair and honest answer. I have no problem with that.
I appreciate that.
Peter, any comments, questions?
I'm not,
Susan, any questions or comments?
No, I
on
think
board?
if we've discovered that we've made a mistake, we should always own up to it and rectify it.
All right, can I have a motion?
I understand the math and the, all right, so make a motion that we reimburse Federal Realty for the sewer bills from 20, 22, 21, and 20 from the property at 169 Norotan Avenue and the property at 132 Heights Road. The property at 169 Norotan Avenue, the refund will be $3,108.42, and the refund from the property at 132 Heights Road will be $782.25.
Do I have a second?
I'll stick.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Susan.
Item 4 passes. All right.
I just took all the numbers right off your Penny's calculation.
Item 5, Federal Realty discussion and action.
They they were the same as mine.
And
I
this
had to
has to
break it
do
down so we had both properties.
with the appropriate,
I'm just saying I double-checked just to be me.
the appropriate prorating of invoices, understanding that there's a goose egg for some of these addresses for last year in terms of water flow, but that these facilities are starting to be occupied.
Oh, no, I think we're
Or
at
is
two
that-
different things
oh,
here.
what's
They,
item number 5?
they have a chart here, which they're talking about. The one that's number, wait a sec,
2 of 3?
Page
The
two.
number 8 is me
Oh,
and
that's
my
you. Okay,
projected
okay, sorry,
building
I got
value.
confused. I'm sorry, I got confused. So tell me what number 5 is at?
Okay, so we ran into the issue with federal, and how we are actually going to try to bill them for their sewer use. They combined all the buildings over there on their property to one list number, which throws our billing process into a little bit of a tailspin. So we went back now and we pulled all the information we could. I sent Tony and Penny both out to these buildings together to look for the water meters in each one of the buildings, make sure they're being fed and where the meter is, how it's associated to the building. So you'll see the list on page, 2 of 3,
Yes.
that there are 6 properties, or 6 meters, associated with this property. And I had to mark whether it was residential, commercial, or both. And I had her give us the readings from last year on the meters. So obviously you can see in the chart there, one was just recently connected, but the other ones, of course, have flows. And I made some notes at the bottom, so you could understand what this chart was all about. Of course, everything's all under one list number. Easy for the tax collector, difficult for the sewer department. Going forward, we'd like to bill these properties or these buildings, let me go to buildings, which have their separate meters, full 12 months of the year, whether they're residential, commercial, or just commercial. I think that cleans up a lot of our issues.
Well, I'm confused now because I talked to Penny before I came in here. She was saying the 5-month annualized. You're saying you
No.
take the actual flow.
No, read line number 2, I'm sorry. She may be confused about another issue, but this is the one, I had to write it down on here,
Okay.
so it wouldn't be a mistake when I make it. Using all 12 months from all 6 locations, that second sentence right there, that's what I'd like to do with these properties.
I mean, I think mixed-use properties, which would be properties with residential and commercial, should be billed on the commercial side, not on the residential side.
And a twist
Which is a
to
12-month.
Mr.
total
Hill's
life.
comments about minimum charges, any building that does not have the minimum flow will be charged the minimum flow. So if you're at 24 and the minimum's 90, we're going to, because these buildings are just starting to come online, we're going to charge you the minimum. You're hooked up, you should be paying the minimum for that connection.
At the very least.
That's,
Yep.
that was my thought process. It's not chiseled in stone, I'm just presenting you what my thoughts are to bill properly for the water that's being used there currently. We also are going to go back and look 1 year prior to see when they were hooked up, see what the flows are, and see if they owe us any minimum charges past when they hooked up, and prorate that over the years, out of the months that they used it.
Yeah, and then like any commercial property user, they would have the ability to sub-meter irrigation if they wanted that taken
That
out
was
of the
gonna be
And I
water
think
flow.
they're going to, we just couldn't find one that they committed to being an irrigation meter. We found a
Yeah.
sub-meter, but it was after the meter that we were gonna be billing from. They didn't qualify it as a irrigation meter, but I'm assuming eventually they're going to wanna do something like that.
Right, as I recall from the P&Z application, there's quite a bit of green area
Yep.
with this development, particularly on the West Avenue side, so they're gonna want to irrigate
And I
that.
think they've put sprinklers in, I didn't see them, but I understand they were doing that to keep the green, if you will. The one thought I did have is, with this spreadsheet set up the way it is, we could easily include a deduction for an irrigation meter, and making sure that we're charging, like I said, the fair value for what they're using, and if they're not reaching the minimum, they're at least paying the minimum. And Bob, I kind of mimicked your philosophy in a way that everyone who's got a connection is paying for that connection, regardless if it's one property or one building, but we narrow these down to one building.
So
It's
is
the
that
best
the
I
only
can come up
question?
with.
Should we bill residential or commercial? And your suggestion is we bill commercial?
I think there's no reason to narrow it down to those 5 months, because a lot of the reasoning for doing that was summer use.
Yeah, commercial,
Washing
you
the
get-
cars.
you get
filling-
seasonal.
Yeah, so the
The
seasonal
seasonal commercial
use
use.
is not there. And if they want to take out the sprinklers or any type of watering and
They have the
system there, they can do
ability.
that.
They need
And
to
we can
sub-meter
apply-
it.
They can
We
apply
should
for that.
Let them know.
Yeah, I agree that they should be informed of all the
Yeah.
discussions.
They had that conversation with the gentleman that took them around to all the buildings.
Perfect.
Okay. So do you need an action by the commission at this point?
What did Penny write down here? Can I follow her lead?
But, all right.
Yes,
So in my opinion, I understand your method. I think we're gonna lose out significantly. I think it should be the prorated 75%, or excuse me, 2/3 of the projected flow. I think you're gonna, unless you're gonna wait until the end of the year and backbill, you're gonna lose out, because the curve is the other way.
We heard you. Penny heard you on the meeting too. She said you were concerned about missing a gap, which is why we will go back and look previous year to make sure that if we charge them zero and they use
Yeah, I think
water,
what Bob is saying, right now, at least one of their buildings is fully occupied, so there's a bunch of apartments filled. They're using water right now in the fiscal year 2022, 2023. But their flow that they're paying a sewer user charge for this year was based on flow data from the year prior, because that's
Yes.
what we get, and that's what we based our bill on. So I think what Bob is saying is the gap that we're missing is as these places are filling up and using water and discharging it to the sewers, I mean, they're kind of getting a free ride for the first year. until we
they
have
are if
better
we
flow
don't take
data.
a look back. Really, I mean, we've had the situation where people have come in and asked for you to, as part of their appeal, to reduce their pay because
Based
they
on
show you a
better
bill
water
for
data.
2 people and the house had 8 people in it.
Oh, so you're
when
saying.
we go back and
let's
look at
say
those.
in July 1st or whatever.
Yeah.
We're gonna look at the last 12 months of actual water use.
Absolutely.
And reassess.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And I
Well, that's
think that kind of closes
That
the
is-
gap to actual flow.
It does, but is that too much work as we get more and more of these units? I was trying to come up with a policy now that just worked
I
and
think,
didn't
It's one list
didn't make
account.
that happen.
I think to look at calculations, ask for calculations, get 75% of them, then bill on those, then you have to true those up to see if that estimate was right based on real data. I mean, I think it's better to use the real data.
it's work in both
Just because I don't
ends.
agree with you doesn't mean I'm not listening to you.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I'm just saying that at some
All the
point in time,
apartments,
truing it up,
are
is
they
that really
sub-metered?
our,
No,
No, it's not our responsibility, but it's
not that
gonna
I'm
go back
aware
to
of, no,
us.
not that I'm aware of.
Great
I mean,
work.
it's, but you could also argue
sorry,
that
I
truing it up at the end, we've lost the float. You know, we've lost the money over it. So I mean, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying there's all different ways to look at it.
Sure.
And that's why I was just trying to come up with a policy that when the building gets the C of O today, you can just bill them and then go forward. You don't have to go forward, look back, go forward, look back. I think that's putting undue work on the office. I think it's easier if they're able to have a policy where they can
Well-
just put it in there and it goes forward. If
Since the office is doing the work, should we let them guide on the
Right.
process?
But the apartments are not sub-metered.
They're not, but the building is metered.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
so how do you separate the two?
we don't, we've had this argument before. They could have had 1 meter for the entire complex and you could pay $268.36 as a minimum and it would be absurd, but yes.
Well, I mean, somehow, I think that in the state of Connecticut, they're allowed to somehow, I don't know how they do it, there's no sub-metering.
There may be, but we don't,
What are
we
they
don't get
allowed
the
to
data.
do?
Yeah,
We
they
don't
are.
know
They
if
would-
there's sub-metering or not.
Aquarian is not
Well,
gonna.
we do know.
They don't do it?
We didn't see any.
The-
And water generally isn't
It's a low value, so they
sub-metered, it's a
just
low
include it in
value.
the building.
Not like electric.
I
or
mean, they
gas.
probably just.
Well, electric and gas are
include the
sub-metered,
water
yeah.
that's used in the, in the lease, you get your water and, but you
My-
pay for
my-
your electricity.
My thought in speaking with Penny about this, and Bobby, right, there is work involved in what we're saying, going back in time and looking. But it was one trip, right? We're not gonna estimate or guesstimate. We're gonna come and we're gonna present to federal a letter that says, oh, by the way, you owe us. And this is why you owe it to us. We read the meters, we billed you for this, you actually used this, here's the difference, and this is what you owe us for the previous year. And I think it was a very clean way of doing it one time. I'm not adverse to looking at the 67% if you want to go that direction. I could look at that.
I really like the idea of using actual data.
Me too.
Because the projections, again, when you're sizing a sewer, your projections are conservative, and the
I
actual
went
water use is.
2/3
Yeah, but I don't know what the right number is. I don't know if it's 75 or 2/3 or half. I don't know what the right number is to say that that's the fair ratio.
I just thought it was
projection to
easier
action.
for office, but if Ed says staff's okay with doing the extra work, I don't have a problem with it.
Is that what Ed is saying?
That's what Ed is saying.
That's what Penny said.
That's what,
More important.
that's what
More importantly, exactly.
Penny would like you to know. Listen, I tell you, she struggled with this for the last couple of months, and
Well, if she's come up with a solution and a system, and we all think it's good,
I think
we should move forward.
sending her out into the field a little bit to get a little fresh air
Yeah.
and see
Oh,
what
she
she's
went and did the
building.
sidewalk?
right?
Okay.
What's that?
She was the one that did the sidewalk?
I made her go with Tony, so
Okay,
she
good.
get a
Yeah.
feel for what she's actually dealing with.
Yeah.
When she's looking at a building from straight down, it's not that anymore, it's 3 stories high.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay, so we agree, well, okay, I guess I'm looking for a motion that might say something like, we agree that it should be charged on a commercial account basis, mixed-use properties should be charged on a commercial account basis. And we agree that when better data is available, we should make sure that the user fee that they paid for the year
Reflects usage.
reflects the actual usage.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a second on the motion. Mr. Van Winkle seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? 4-0. Where did I put my cover page? There we go. No,
Some pump redirection.
there it is. Item number 5, sump pump redirection programs. I did a data dump on everybody.
There were
Oh,
no
yeah.
materials, right? There were no materials on?
They were sent in an email.
Oh,
You didn't get this?
I think you got the email. I printed
I
a bunch
might
of them
have.
out.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I printed it too.
So
Sorry, I
the
missed it.
general concept with it was for years, we've talked about sump pump discharge from the basements of properties, puts clean water into our sewer system that we are paying to pump to Stanford and paying Stanford to treat. And we would prefer those sump pumps were not connected. Not only would we prefer, there's an ordinance that says you're not allowed to do that. And I think for the last, do I want to say 4 years, at least 3 years, maybe 4 years, we've sent mailers with the bill that says, please disconnect your sump pumps. We need your help. It's not legal to have sump pumps connected. Please disconnect them. And we probably have had a handful of people that have called and a handful of people that have done something about that. We are going, with the Arcadis work and the phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 and future phases 4, 5, and 6, undefined at this point, we are going after the low-hanging fruit that is within our capability to do something about immediately. So our system on town property, in town easements, we're going after the clean water getting into our system and paying dearly to get rid of it. The estimated price is at least $4.4 million. It's probably going to be up given escalation in time and inflation. So this may be premature for right now, but I would like to start thinking seriously about how to do more than a piece of paper that goes out with the bill that says, please disconnect your sump pump. And so Reese and I spoke offline. He had found the program in Princeton. He's kind of thinking as a realtor, and the buying and selling of properties, and whether or not there could be an ordinance or even a state law that says when you buy or sell a property that the sump pump registration is a part of it and confirmation that it is not hooked up to a sewer system. That was the Princeton one. Of course, don't think I printed out the Princeton one. Anyway.
Started reading it.
And it basically said that. It said, upon the sale of a property, there has to be a registration. It talked about who could complete the registration. It talked about when it needed to be filed and that sort of thing. So this was all done to facilitate a conversation to say that I would like to start thinking about how we handle the fact that we imagine that there may be hundreds or more, thousands, somewhere between those two numbers, of sump pumps connected to our sewer system, and how do we, over time, reduce that number, and what teeth do we have, and what teeth can we create to reduce that number. So that's why I sent all that information around and asked for it to be put on the agenda. So we can kind of discuss it in concept now, we could discuss it in a concept at a future agenda. Ed, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I looked through some publishers of it and had an opportunity to speak to Reese too. He stopped in to talk about it. And it just, I think he's starting to realize that it's gonna require a little more of a heavier hand to get some of these things off and unconnected, if you will, or disconnected from our system. The part that's becomes interesting is, you know, talking about how do you do that and what help does, quote unquote, the town give these people, if any? You know, do we applaud them and do we give them help to disconnect? You know, is there a $500 rebate if you do? I mean, other places have done it. I'm not saying sump pumps, but you know, let's say Eversource is a good thing. They pay you to change out your oil burner to gas, or they change or upgrade something.
Or
There's
they
some
connect
type
your air
of.
conditioning so that they can shut it off on a brownout day.
That's correct.
Give you money for that.
Just is there need to be an incentive or some way to
Carrot and stick.
That was kind of a conversation I had with Reese also. But you know, and
But
how
to
do you
the
make sure they're
extent we're
disconnected?
paying-
How do you make sure they stay connected? You
Yeah.
know, what's your inspection,
Yeah.
quote unquote,
Well,
policy?
let me ask a question. If the sump pumps had a meter, or, you know, put it differently, if they were paying for the water that they're pumping into the sewer line, would we care?
Yes, that'd be more than their sewer bill.
Well, if they were paying
good.
for it, I guess this was what.
What's
Peter
wrong
said.
with that?
So they're getting half of what they're putting in the sewer for free.
No,
No, he's
I
talking
say
about
what
charging
they're
them.
putting in the sewer.
Oh, yeah, we're not,
With the water, you know, from the sump pump,
They're-
they're paying for it.
So Peter, let's, you know, you say maybe there's one, or there's 5. Let's say there's 1,000 that want to pay. What do you think that does to our system? I think Susan's got the answer.
I'm sorry, I'm like, wait a minute, are we over capacity or not here?
Do we want to introduce more water that really
Well,
doesn't
no,
belong in
I
our
mean,
system
no,
to begin
but I
with?
mean,
No.
there are gonna be people who, you know, they have sump pump because otherwise they'll have swimming pools in their basement.
There may
But I-
be no good location to discharge that pump, sump
Yeah,
pump.
in
But
which
they have to
case,
pay for it.
they have to pay.
Yes.
So
If it's
is
determined that there is no good location, kind of thing, yeah.
So is that a policy for an appeal to
Yeah.
keep my sump pump? Though I put a meter on it and I can pay. But-
Are they aware of how much it's gonna cost?
Well, I mean, this is
do
all
what?
hypothetical.
Yeah, I know,
To do the
to
meter?
keep their sump pump and
It's
pay for it.
expensive, yeah.
I mean, I'm,
I think after the first year, they'll know.
I think
well,
you're,
we'll get a
then-
zillion appeals.
I think you're right. There are, oh, I think I might have just unplugged the.
but once the first year goes and the word of how expensive it is, the other people go to extremes to hide their sump.
Some of them do that now.
I know that.
Look, I
Well,
don't
there's
think-
another alternative. Unless you come forward and prove that there's no sump pump, you're getting charged.
oh yeah, it's that way. So.
Well, that's a lot of inspections.
Well, I mean-
Big question. One, I don't think, there are always going to be cases of individuals not doing the right thing. And
Right.
it could be a few percent, it could be tens of percent. But I think we need to, at least the idea was to come up with a legislative process that addressed the bulk, right?
Well, I think where you need to start is first, you need to make sure that the notifications actually get to the homeowners, and it isn't just someone who's taking care of the bills and sees extraneous paperwork, and that is in the circular file instantly, and then they just pay the bill. because they don't own the property, they don't do anything except pay the bill. So what I think Reese's idea was, you put some kind of a piece of paper in there that needs to be signed. It might
Yeah.
not be any legal piece of paper, but something that's signed. And then if they don't sign it, then we send them another letter that if you don't sign this one, then you will be billed.
Well,
Yeah,
you're
so
gonna have to have that signature notarized.
It's the
I
idea
can tell you.
of,
Okay, but I'm just saying.
yeah, the concept of
Yeah.
effectively a registration program for
Sump
sump
pumps.
pumps, right? And where do you start that? How do you start that? Reese's really was a small bit, right? There's 100 properties that transfer in any given year, whatever the number is, 200. And it's going through a careful legal process with lots of paperwork, and, there's some kind of ordinance that gets this piece of paperwork in that. And so at least a couple hundred times a year, we get a few properties registered, right? And I think, I like that idea. I think the Princeton thing was pretty straightforward. I think, Reese is interested in it from the real estate side.
How about registration for no sump pump?
Well, yeah, same thing.
I think
There's
Pete-
an
Pete
option
is
at
on
the top.
the-
It's like, I have one or I don't have one.
I think Pete is on the trail of guilty until proven innocent, but that's the heavy hand,
Yeah.
right? That's the,
Well,
show me
the-
that, there's gonna be a fee attached to your bill now, right? You pay X. Well, there's gonna be a fee for something, let's say. To eliminate that fee, you need to document that you don't have a sump pump. Now, all
And I
of a
like-
sudden, that's,
yeah.
now people
Well-
are sending you these things signed off.
But that's part one.
But
Part two is the sump pump doesn't go to the sanitary sewer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but-
Yes.
And if you,
And
if you read, yeah,
and
sorry to
that,
bring that
while
up.
it's extremely obvious to you and I, to a lot of people, it's not.
Yeah, so do you
So
have to
the
have?
problem is, if you send these out October 1st, Anthony will be working 24/7 until July 1st of the next year, going to all these houses where the people just don't know.
We can't do 5,000 at once.
So
It is not practical.
that won't work either.
But I was thinking, do you have, is a plumber allowed to sign it? Is an engineer allowed to assign it? Is a contractor allowed to sign it? Was our staff allowed to sign it? Is a building inspector allowed to sign, increase the number of individuals that are allowed to
Yeah.
sign off on it on behalf of
Didn't we
a
have an
property
issue with
owner.
somebody over on Old Kings Highway South where we wanted to know, their engineer did sign off on it, but
Yeah.
we said no?
Yeah.
Okay.
We asked to go in 100 properties and 99 let us in, and we had
Yeah.
an issue with one. So I'm not gonna stop a legislative process because a few
Right,
percent of
but
the
I'm-
people are not gonna comply.
Right.
Well, but is
they
that-
might just have somebody sign off on it and have it be false.
Sure, but that's the other thing, is if we give them, we have to be careful about giving people the incentive to do the wrong thing, right? So if we're saying we're gonna charge you an extra $100 this year until you prove to us that you don't have a sump pump that's connected to the sewer, you're giving them an incentive to save the $100, right? So that's the concern. So one way to do it is do you start off with the carrot for year one or year two, and then by year three or by year four, you're doing the stick.
Well,
You
but
know-
how fast do you want to do it is the question, because like I said, I don't think you want them all to come due, so I would almost think you'd arbitrarily do 300.
Yeah, you pick a number a year, whatever,
And-
10% a year.
And but I would think you'd also work in coordination with the 200 that get sold, and maybe you get 450 out of the two.
Yeah, it's just huge.
And target people where you
No.
know that there's high groundwater.
What do you think?
Or they're-
Well, actually, you were
Businesses.
saying that too. Some of the areas that
Yeah.
you suspect have more
Kind of
sump
want
pumps
to
than
target,
others.
but then you're gonna get the comments, why are you picking on me? What about the rest of the town? My friend lives in such as, they have sewer, they don't get the letter I just got that says you need to change.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's random.
Yeah, random is good. I'm a pull the Band-Aid off, one shot kind of guy.
Me too.
Give me 5,429 customers telling me they do, they don't, they're gonna disconnect, and at least I have a plan. So maybe we have to bring in somebody to help us. Maybe we have to
Yeah.
bring a consultant that knows what to look at, knows what to look for, and we put together a program that says, we're gonna send this out, and then we're gonna get some feedback, and then we're gonna need you to go knock on these doors. And it could be at night, it could be on the weekends, it could be during the day, whatever it is, but put together something that gets us something done in 6 months.
And if you look at what we're spending, let me just.
look
4 point whatever million.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing, I just
Yeah.
think that'd be tough.
But look, we're spending
Because you
again,
have normal, everyday things to be doing at the same time.
Yeah.
you know, we're spending $4.4 million on these first 3 phases to get rid of clean water in our system. So I'm guessing that hiring a consultant and a group of people to work for 3 months to kind of figure this out
It'll
is
pay
gonna be
for
a fraction of
itself,
that. And it'll pay for itself over time.
Absolutely.
But if we know where the highest INI is, then.
We can start from a.
But then are we picking on people, or are we using
Technical data.
No, I think-
data-driven science to choose them?
No, I think what Ed is
I'm
saying,
data-driven.
we do them all at once, and I think that really is the way to go.
But we
Do 'em all
could, we
at
could
once.
also prioritize the list based
Yeah.
on areas of highest influence.
That's,
I
you know,
just think
it
We
would-
can start here, then go
500
here, then go here,
in
go by,
But also-
go
All
by
at
our
the same
sewer
time
sheds.
would just be a little,
but
I'm not saying they're all gonna answer, but
just think of that information then being dumped into GIS, having the
I
records
love it.
accessible so that
I
we can.
love that
You
idea.
know,
Oh, yeah, I
I go
can't-
back in 5 years, he
I
goes,
have bigger
yeah, they're
dreams
not
about our
supposed to be
GIS
connected,
system,
and, you know, we're having a
which
problem.
Darren and I have fantasized about, but,
There are a lot of houses that will just say, I don't have it, go ahead and come and check, and they really don't have a
And
sump pump.
maybe-
I'm one of them,
You're
I
gonna
don't have a
ones
sump
that say I
pump.
don't have it, and then, oh, that's a sump pump?
Well,
Darren,
okay,
Darren, how
so
you
now
doing?
they get
you all right?
educated.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you grabbing your arms and massaging.
Don't,
Yeah.
don't be grabbing anything. or-
Uh-oh, don't grab your left arm.
Everything's good.
Watching you like a hawk.
Pacifying
That helps you
behavior.
relax. So
I like this idea of
generating
after
some
them.
program.
yeah.
So I guess the question that I'll pose to staff to consider for the next 4 or 5 weeks is, what steps do we need to take to bring this to fruition between, does Arcadis or consultant have thoughts? Does the town attorney have thoughts? What do we need with regulations or ordinances or policies? And it's not even what are the policies and what are the ordinances or what is the plan? That's not even the question yet. The question is, how do we answer those questions? That's my question.
Well, here's the best news I can give you then, Tyne, about that is, next month, I have invited Lindsay to come and speak about the CMOM.
CMOM.
She could be here to answer questions that you may have on other topics.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good opportunity maybe for her to give you maybe her insight on what maybe has done in other towns or heard of in other towns on how to address the sump pump issue.
So you want to give that, or you can give her a preview on that question?
I'll give her a little heads up.
Give her a little heads up.
A little heads up.
All right, that sounds good. All right, so it sounds like there's general consensus that over the course of time, we need to develop some sort of policy or program to accelerate the disconnection of sump pumps.
Just for giggles, could you ask Arcadis if we wanted to hire them as the person their company is doing the inspections, and say it took 4 months, a ballpark, and what it would cost us? Just so we kind of,
I mean, talking
No,
about,
or-
talking about getting in to see these things.
well, you're probably, I mean, according to the stats in here, you're only getting into 60% of them, so I mean, but just, if they, I don't, what do you think, 2 people, 4 months, just so we had some kind of idea of what,
I mean, I think we'll get there. I just think we don't know enough about what we're trying to know yet.
I know, I'm just trying to see if we think that what it's gonna cost us is gonna be worth, and I think it is, but I
Worth
think we
the
need to
effort of-
prove that before we go any
Well,
further.
that would be just one more component to the whole thing. We don't even know what we're asking for yet.
I agree.
So we don't know
Or-
how
or the
many people
mechan-
it's gonna
Or the
take.
mechanism of how we're doing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just.
But I think that is one component. If it's
I'm
gonna
with
cost
Bob,
us
though, I'd love
10,000.
to have a number.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let me talk to her and see
I mean,
if she
it's
can even
nothing
do
etched
that.
in
but
stone, it's just
That's
some
another good-
idea
You
where
want
you
a
are.
ballpark?
That's another good question for her.
I mean,
Because
also
I
we
still
need an
like the idea
engineer.
of, you could have, some sort of certified or licensed professional expert in understanding what a sump pump is and where it goes. So you could pay for yourself to do it if you wanted to do that, or you could have the town's personnel do it, right? Like, so, could be it.
Is it possible to put a meter on a sump pump?
Mhm.
Yes,
I mean, there are gonna be people, I mean, we had someone come,
Yeah.
you don't know who she is, but we had someone come when we were raising our fees, and she was very upset because she was one of the people that had a sump pump and she removed it, and now her backyard is a pond.
Yeah, but
She
it-
said,
it-
now my backyard is a pond, so there's gonna be a lot of incentive for people to rehook them up. Are we going to
Yeah.
have them taken out completely? remove the whole sump pump apparatus?
No.
We
Well,
want to see a
let-
picture?
You
Let-
you can't, well, if you need a sump pump because of that problem, and you're willing to,
Pay for
pay
it.
for it,
Then we have to meter it.
pardon me?
Yes.
Then
We
you
have to
it,
meter
sure,
it, yeah.
Sure, but I mean, there are places that are low,
Yeah, I
That's the
mean,
way it is.
I could see
Well, I
think there's
hitting
some
the
places
CF
downtown.
every day.
Yeah, we're gonna, look, this is gonna be a bell,
commercial, not
this is
just
gonna be a
residential.
bell curve of edge cases,
Yep,
right? And so,
yep.
the middle 2/3 are gonna be like kind of easy to fit into a program, but we're gonna spend 10 years on the final thirds,
If
if we ever even get there.
If we can eliminate 2/3 of the flows coming from the sump pumps,
It's
it would
a
be
huge, 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 huge win.
huge investment.
Yeah.
And technically, you can stop new ones from occurring in new buildings.
You,
One would
Technically.
hope.
We've gotten some really good feedback from the building department and the inspectors out there. They do let us know when they come across them, so we are able to send Tony out there to make sure it's either disconnected, or if they may have missed something, it's connected to the right place.
And I guess then if they're going to put in meters, somebody has to read the meter.
Yeah, well, but I mean, I could see their sump pump bill being $1,000 easily.
Oh,
Oh,
Easily, I'm
more
saying
than that,
easily.
more
yeah,
than that.
no, it's,
But I'm
It-
sorry,
that's
I'm
gonna
just
be its own bill.
brainstorming the steps that you're gonna have to put
But I'm
in.
And then-
saying,
and then
I'm
what's
saying,
the-
up
It's not
from
even-
let's,
there.
let's say, let's go to, again, you get, I've had this sump pump connected for 40 years and it's never been a problem and I've relied on the system and now you're telling me I gotta pay $1,000 a month to keep it hooked up and that's.
You're
Lucky
Yeah.
we're not back charging you for all the years that you weren't doing
But
it.
look, I mean, these are the edge
At least 3 years.
and they're gonna get ugly, so, anyway,
But
I
we're not
think we
gonna
all
back charge
agree
people,
that we
right?
need to
There's the carrot.
start developing a
Right.
plan to eventually get to a point where we're implementing a plan.
Plus a hardship thing somewhere.
Gonna be hard, yeah.
But like I said, how much it's gonna cost and how much staff is willing to, because if staff really thinks that they're okay with, sending out 5,500 notices at once and answering the phone calls from that, then that's on them.
I think they're
There'll be
thinking
no
of hiring
vacation
somebody
until the first of the year.
to handle
I
it.
thought it was gonna be overwhelming when we did the backflow valves, and it was at the very beginning. It started, first couple of weeks, it was 3 or 4 calls a day, and I religiously called them back. The sad part was, it wasn't from, a family of 4, it was the elderly, it was the older folks, or the single mom, or something that had the houses, and I'm like, okay, this is what you need to do, and I'd walk her through the process, walk him through the process, whatever it is. Those are the ones that are difficult. Those are the ones.
Yeah,
But they're the
need
ones who
support.
open it
Yeah.
and read it page by page and, and do it that way. Like I said, I think there's a lot of people out there who have billing services, pay their bills. They never even see the paperwork.
I mean, and then, the other way to do this is not dissimilar to how the building department or the health department or planning and zoning does it, which is when you're asking for something that you don't have right now, that's when you get the requirement, right? Like, you're selling your property, you're asking for a building permit, you're asking for a zoning permit, we covered at that incrementally, however many hundreds of applications that is over the year. And we don't do this cast an everybody net and pull it in.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say you do
That's when you're
data-driven
picking-
science.
that's
You
when
go
I
to
feel
the-
you'll get
the wet
criticized
places,
for picking on people.
You do
I
those
like them,
and
do it all at once.
then you throw in the sales.
Not dissimilar to our developer who said, well, why am I the first kind of thing?
Do it all at once. Let's not treat anybody
Yeah.
special just because they're in a high groundwater area.
Okay.
Band-Aid.
Okay.
Band-Aid.
We could target the priority areas, the ones that show high indication. I mean, we could group, I love the net thing, pull them all in, and then as you weed them out, you say, okay, let's start in this area.
Yeah.
Let's start in this area.
Color code 'em.
And then start looking at it.
All right, so that was item number 6. Any further discussion on that before we move on?
No.
Item number 7, similarly, and, where did I put this one?
Similarly, but much different.
Similarly, but much different.
Okay, first question. This is above and beyond the connection fee?
Yes, that was the idea.
Okay.
Oh.
Second question.
You got Bob's attention with that one.
No, I had 5 questions.
Okay,
Second
here it is.
question.
Item 7, one of 8.
$4,380,000. doesn't include the study, or it does? The
Uh,
actual study, because I think to find the,
You
or is
lost,
this just for the rehab?
you
I
lost me
think-
where?
So, okay, yeah, let's slow down. So this is the inflow and infiltration abatement policy
Okay.
concept. The big picture concept is we're spending a certain amount of money to remove clean water from our system. So it's one idea about cost recovery as a concept. It's another idea about parity and new connections and paying for that capacity that is either being created or preserved. And also responding to Bob's suggestion that at some level, right, we have the easy applications that don't need to see the sewer commission that staff can discharge for somebody building a new house or something like that, or adding a bedroom. But that there is a certain size project that a report needs to be generated to prove capacity. So that's all kind of captured in this. It's based on a similar policy in Westport, where they basically charge people for projected flows to fund I&I abatement programs. So to your specific question, this policy suggested a fee be applied to new users, or what did I call, what's the term?
Intensification.
Intensification of use users, which is a term we used in our regulations already, of $5.41 for each additional gallon per day of new effluent. And I got that number by taking page 78 of the SSCS report, which estimated the cost of implementing phases 1, 2, and 3 of our I&I abatement program at $4.38 million, and estimated the success of that program to remove something like 800,000 gallons per
So
day
that
of
didn't,
capacity.
that does not include the study.
So yeah, so this is for the design and engineering oversight of these construction projects is included,
No.
but not
It's the
the,
first three
Yeah.
phases,
yeah,
and we all know that Old Kings Highway South is more of a,
done.
but it was more of a
Oh, yeah.
rehab on the pipe than it was
Yeah.
an I&I reduction, so.
So that was more about the condition of the pipe.
Correct.
Than it was about I&I
Yep.
abatement. So you're saying there might be some,
Reconfiguration.
yeah, that maybe
So
we
let's-
take the
let's take
800 out of
numbers,
there.
Right, I think their estimate was 800,000.
810, yeah.
The study was 700,000, so if you want to say Old Kings Highway maybe shouldn't be an I&I project, but you
And
want to
then
throw
half of
the
that
study
money,
in to see
we got
what the
reimbursed by
number.
the state for half of that money?
With 350,000
Yeah.
coming back.
Yeah, but okay, so the idea is, and this is not set in stone, I threw it down on a piece of paper in one day. The idea is to come up with a fair number, that is the number that we're investing in our I&I abatement program, and we're doing our best to estimate the benefit of that and come up with that fair number to charge. That's the concept.
So I did the math for 7 Sedgwick, assuming
Yeah.
that the 4,275 is still an accurate number, which I'm not sure of. But
That's
assuming
projected
that
by
it
the
was,
DPH.
those gallons were an additional, it would be $23,127.75
And that would
would be the I&I fee to 7
And when they came in here
Sedgwick.
at the beginning, they were asking if there was a fund they could contribute to.
Well,
And that
I'm
would
not
be,
sure that was the amount they were looking to contribute.
Just
and that would be
mentioning
in addition to
The
the
connection.
11
Yeah.
grant connection fee. Now, I will say that Westport uses this. So this is what they are charging people. And their number happened to be similar, it was like $5.13 or something is the number from their I&I abatement policy. Stanford's connection fees generally are higher than ours. You know, it's, I forgot what they are, but instead of 500 per apartment, they're at least 1,000 per apartment, I think. I don't know, I gotta go back and check.
1250
They
or
were
something
pretty
like
high.
that.
Yeah, 1250 per month, so they're higher than ours, so, but they don't use an I&I payment fee. And Greenwich doesn't really do this, they're just starting to relate, they kind of look at a project and say, well, you're probably gonna generate this much, we've had our engineer that's making our recommendations say there's these 3 projects nearby you, so go do those 3 projects. And we think that's fair for what you're, you know, so it's a very much a case-by-case basis. And by the way, this all happens at staff level in both towns, not at the commission level.
Once we have the policy,
Yeah,
it'll
yeah.
happen at staff level.
I would hope
It's
so.
just we have to come up with a policy.
I agree.
For staff.
So that's the first baseline is, am I intensifying use or not by at least 1,000 gallons? If you are intensifying use by at least 1,000 gallons, the policy applies. You now have to estimate your flows, you have to tell us about the capacity of the downstream system, you have to leave a certain amount of excess capacity in the system, or do improvements to it, and you have to pay an I&I abatement fee. And then there's so one thing I did with, for peer reviews was under note 2. So anything that was 10,000 gallons or more, sewer commission could easily say, absolutely, we need a peer review. And anything that identified was using up more than 80% of the capacity of the downstream system, peer review, sewer commission could ask for a peer review. That's the basic outline. So now we'll go to comments. Sorry, do you have one question? Do you have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, the 10,000 seems kind of high, because that would be
High.
67 bedrooms. Yes, I used the calculator, I might choose.
We could go to 5, is that better?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot better.
Okay.
But I also don't like the word may. See, I like it to, this happens, then this happens.
Yeah.
I'm already
I would say
allowing
will.
33,
Yeah.
and it should be a will.
Yeah.
It should be lower than that, and, you know,
I-
depending on where they are, but.
I agree with Will. I think the other way I was thinking about it is if we just happen to know, like maybe it's a system that has plenty of capacity and we just had a study and we know, like, is there a situation where the sewer commission could say, we don't have to do the peer review here?
But they're
There's
allowed
almost
to
a-
use that data, so it should be a quick
Quick
and
one.
dirty
Yeah.
thing from them. But
Yeah.
I still think they need to go through the process. Because who knows, they could find an error from the previous person. And
You're
I'm not
right.
meaning that in
You're
any
right. No, you're
mean
right.
way.
You're
I'm
right.
saying sometimes you look at something, 6 times you get the same
And-
answer.
Or in a
but it
different
isn't.
light and from a different perspective, different, yeah.
And if we're doing a policy, then I think the will works better than may.
So you
May
think-
just leaves too much wiggle room.
Peer review required. So Ed and Darren, obviously we have a lot of engineers on staff. Do you think, given all of these questions and all of these sensitivities, as we move forward, outside peer review should be more common?
It's not meant as disrespect.
Yeah, it should happen more often. I won't speak for Darren, and he can do that himself. He's very good. But
He's been quiet tonight.
He has been.
We're
Right.
gonna start asking the questions directly.
There's gonna, as we start to identify areas in our system that need attention, and we give it to it, I think we're gonna see improvement in our system's capacity. I believe that wholeheartedly.
I do too.
And I understand that, it's gonna take a little bit of time to do that. So in the interim, we do have to have something in place that can get us over the hump with some of these developments that's coming down. And, you hear whispers about other ones that are coming through, people talk to you about them. So I know there's a couple more that will be coming down along this line. I know you folks are aware of one over on Thorndale, but there may be a couple others. I think having a third-party review, peer review, should be more commonplace then.
For kind of the larger new developments.
Yeah, the single, single family, multiple units maybe, something that's very simple in an area that doesn't require it. I think, we're more than capable of handling that. But I think we'll look at, for something that are borderline, we'll look at case by case, location, and if we have to, we'll come back to you folks for an opinion, your guidance. I think that, your comfort level has got to be our comfort level too.
Yeah. Okay. So 5 seems better than 10, I guess, is what we're saying. So And then I clarified note 3, the cost of the flow analysis, identified necessary downstream improvements, peer review and abatement fee are in addition to the permit fee and connection fee.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, that was, I tried to clarify, for the applicant also.
Did you put something on? Is it supposed to be paid by the applicant? Is that the?
Yeah,
That's number
item number 3.
Yeah, under notes.
Yeah.
Oh, did I not, actually didn't
It
say.
said C note 1, but
They're in addition to, well, let's see, so I said,
cost of flow analysis.
In addition to the permit fee. and
yeah, well, so it's kind of under requirements. So under requirements, the applicable person or entity, the applicant, shall provide the flow estimates, the capacity analysis, improvements if so necessary, or a fee in lieu if that makes more sense, the I&I abatement fee. So I say that all under the requirements. Those are the requirements of the applicants to do those things. And then note 3 clarifies that that's all in addition to the connection fee. So you can't say, oh, I'm already paying an X $1,000 connection fee, take it out of that.
I'm just trying. I mean, you know what the capacities are at various points now, right? What's left, let us say. So, somewhere along the line, what happened as we just heard, they went over to, this last case, they went over to planning and zoning, sent all out. And they eventually came here. But if that information was over at planning and zoning, that there's only so much capacity here and there, I mean, maybe, I don't know, it seems to me like that's sort of what happened up in Westport, that planning and zoning, said, well, you can't do it because there's not enough capacity. And then they sent them down to the sewer commission, and, sewer commission prevailed because the court did not have the technical ability to really understand what the problem was.
That's that soft.
Even though it seemed pretty straightforward.
Unknown caller.
So, I'm just wondering, I mean, would sort of a report that says what's left would be of any value? I mean, a person comes in here and they say, we want to build this, and, if they looked at a report to start with, they'd say, well, how the hell are we going to build that?
So
But today's report might not be any good 6 months from now.
Well,
yeah,
that's the point.
Reese
You gotta
has asked
update.
this question before, which is,
A lot of money.
why can't we just have, this map with red, yellow, and green on it? Green's got 50%, is less than 50% full, yellow is less than 75% full, red is more than 75% full. Why can't we just have that map? And the reality is it just costs too much money to generate that map. So for instance, we did flow monitoring over 2 months at 9 different points. That's 9 points. And you can extrapolate a little bit upstream from those points and a little bit
Okay.
downstream from those points. But as soon as you get different laterals coming in and different neighborhoods coming in, different buildings coming in, those points
Yeah,
break down, we
It's
don't
a
have
moving
them.
number. It's a
Yeah.
moving
I got the
number.
dollar picture. It's-
Yeah.
Okay.
But the other,
It's technically feasible if you wanted to pay
Yeah, right.
Arcadis
Yeah.
a few $1 million to do it. And what we know, what Ed was saying is that, and I agree because I've read all these reports, the things that we're doing are going to have a big impact. And we're not going to stop doing them at the end of phase 1, 2, and 3. We're going to keep finding new locations outside of Stony Brook or within Stony Brook, and we're going to keep going after it. And over time, right, it may be easier for us to say, we know we don't have a capacity problem over time. But we're kind of in this bridge period where we haven't done the projects yet, so we don't know how successful they're going to be, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway.
Okay.
before we leave this, there's just, A, I want to find out if anybody has more comments or questions on it. But B is to kind of talk about, what would be the next steps of this. Again, it's probably back to our lawyers to say, do we have the right to do this? And if we wanted to do this, how would we do this? Be setting some of these numbers, making sure the numbers are considered fair.
I only have one suggestion other than, other than we all noticed that we are missing one commissioner who
Oh, yeah.
seems to always have a little different view
He
of certain
does.
things. And I think it would be helpful to him to be included in this, but
Sure.
if you'd like us to start the process with the town attorney, to have him just look at it first to make sure it's still it's something that's feasible
Yeah,
and allowable.
Yeah.
We
Well,
can
if
do that.
Westport's doing it, it's gotta be feasible and allowable.
but we want this, I need the seal of approval. I mean, we need him to,
Right.
yeah.
Well, he
But I
can-
agree, but,
Yeah.
Well, so he doesn't need to reinvent any wheels. He can go to
Hopefully-
Westport and see
hopefully
how
not.
Westport.
We'll give him Westport's.
Yeah.
And just say, look, please look at this, this is what we'd like here to do in town. Please tell us if we're way off base or
Right.
if it's something that is actually
we have the
allowed.
right to assess. We have the right
You
to cost recovery. Those are clear. Are we applying that right in an equitable fashion in accordance
Well,
with
yeah,
our own
'cause
Well, I
ordinances?
think we should, I don't think Reese would have any problems with us moving
Oh,
forward,
I-
asking the town attorneys.
You know me, I'm not trying to delay.
I think to do this expeditiously is,
Yeah, no, I'm just, the only part I would think could be in question is the fact that you're setting up a 1,000 gallon per day threshold, and is that
Fair, not fair?
fair or not, because you're not saying everybody. I'm not saying I wanna say everybody, but, is that the part that?
It's like the 1,000 square foot number.
yeah, exactly, which has turned out to be not such a great number in
So
some
that would be
instances.
my
So that's
only
always gonna
question
be the
from
case.
the
Yeah.
law
With
perspective,
swimming
whether or
pools,
not
it's
you're,
just not a good number.
Hmm.
just
A lot of
highlighting
880 square foot. swimming
bigger
pools out there.
developments.
You have no debt.
I don't know if I'm saying it right, but
But your connection fee
Are you
doesn't.
identifying the larger intensive uses, or should it?
be,
Connection fee covering which portion?
Be
more
more broad.
When you,
Yeah.
when they
because it was kinda
connect
like
up-
you were saying,
Hold on, let's do one at a time, sorry.
When they
No.
connect up, they pay a connection fee, right? So, maybe that's the time to grab the money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's two different amounts of money.
Yeah.
It's basically it's like a building permit fee, right? So it's like a flat rate plus the cost of construction. Small
Right.
project, it's this big, big project, it's this
Yeah.
big. It
Yeah.
scales with the cost of construction.
Yeah.
So this fee is just a one-time fee.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, for users that are intensifying their use of the system.
Just wanted to get that out there.
but yeah, because then I could see
It's not
it,
it's not the user fees.
I could see
It's to
it,
keep the user fees in check.
And the
As
the
we
fee
go down
pays
the
for
line.
what?
Yep.
we're recouping some of the
Money we-
I rehabilitation funds we've spent.
Yeah.
But I could also, like I said, I could also see it applying to everyone. I mean, a house that adds two bedrooms, it's gonna be a minimal amount, so I don't think they're gonna question it.
Yep.
The ones that are under 1,000 gallons a day, I don't think they're gonna question it.
Well, I'm just paying it.
So I don't see where
Yeah,
that
that 1,000
might
gallons,
be what you have to do
if
though.
you're using 150 gallons per bedroom per day, which is the,
Can you just build that into the connection fee? I mean, it's sort of, I mean,
That's
after a while,
a good
people
question. I
get
think the-
tired of paying fees.
What's the intent of the connection fee, and what's the intent of the
Yeah.
I&I fee, right? What are we looking
Yeah, the
at?
connection fee is to join the club.
Yep.
The I fee is to
pay for a project that the club
to
is doing.
offset your
Pay for the additional parking space.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
but that's,
affluence
Yeah.
going into
but that's
this.
an accounting.
It is.
It is,
but-
it's not a crazy idea, Peter, because we're scaling this based on how much you're
Yeah.
intensifying your use. Do we just
I mean, it just seems to me.
make it one fee instead of
So-
two fees?
One
So then it would
one of
be
the
what,
problems is
$5
if you get
more?
criticized these days, there's another fee,
$750
more
more per bedroom.
control,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
you need it, you
150,
need the
so-
fee,
okay.
fine, but maybe you can get it.
I'm not,
I don't mean, you know,
But the
in
car-
an underhanded
So that-
I'm not
way.
opposed to doing it that way.
You can
So then it would be
explain to people,
basically
in their feet
$750
is
more
what
per
you're
bed.
paying for.
Yeah, so yeah, if we took our example from before where it was 11K hookup fee and you figured a 23K I&I abatement fee, so that would have been a 34K hookup fee. So instead of 500, it would have been 1,500.
Well, but I'm just doing 150 times 5.
Yeah, yeah, so that's another way to go about the cost recovery of this
I
money
mean,
that we're spending.
Is this fee paid whether they build or not?
No, I would say it's a connection fee. So when they're connecting, they're paying.
Right, in other words,
So
so-
they built it, it's
Okay, I mean-
trying to connect, or they're going to build it, yeah. I mean,
Because-
it does seem to me that, yes, there is, because let's talk about equity, I think is it's appropriate thing to talk about, right? So there's, one, it benefits the whole, right? Because we're less likely to have SSOs in the future. So everybody benefits from that, care of the system and the maintenance of the system that gives it another 50 years every time we line it a pipe. So why are we targeting users that are intensifying to pay for it? On the other hand, you know, that's the capacity that we're creating, you know, and preserving to effectively let these people use it,
Intensify.
you know, and so I can see both sides of that. So maybe it is somewhere in the middle, you know, like.
Why should the
But is
homeowner
it,
pay for
I'm
it?
thinking it might,
When it's easy.
we'll have to find out, but it may not be, it's this, I see a parallel between that and the mill rate. You can't assess a different mill rate to commercial properties that you do to residential. So how many residential houses are gonna have an increase of more than 1,000 gallons a day? So commercial could claim that you are targeting them. So that, if you're using the
Yeah,
same
we're targeting
reasoning as mill rate, this
intensified.
would not be allowable.
Yeah, we're targeting intensifiers, yeah, yeah. So I think these are good discussions to have. Maybe that's why having legal perspective might help kind of make sure we do something that's.
And just to throw that out there, I mean, this I-9 program's not gonna go on forever.
Yeah.
So maybe this fee doesn't have to either.
Are you
Just a
sure?
thought.
Yeah, that's a good
Well,
question.
you only
too.
get 6 more years of this I&I program.
But-
Yeah,
But I meant I will consider, you may not have the program, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to still be getting I.
I read in someone's report over the
Right?
last month
True.
Okay.
that
I'm just checking.
There's
I'm-
actually-
My whole world has
It's-
gotten turned upside down. I'm like,
I think it was
I trust anything.
maybe the Greater New Haven Sewer Authority has a lot of good books to focus on this stuff. And it was either them or EPA. They had like even for new construction, here is the amount of I&I that would occur kind of over a 20-year life that you should figure out. Like, you know, even for new construction,
Mhm.
right? Never gets to zero.
No.
And it always weakens over time and
Mhm.
increases again. So
No.
I agree, we're gonna get through a big slug in the next 6 or 7 years.
Mhm.
And you'll probably retire.
I think 6 was the optimum number on that one, yes.
But I would think that, you know, there's always gonna be somewhere to look.
I think Reese has always said it, he goes, we'll never get it to zero, we'll never get it, well,
No, you
that's.
won't get it to zero.
obviously
And we don't
not,
have to.
But.
We get it to good enough.
But do you have to, right? Do you have to get it to zero?
And that's a good point. At what point does it make sense to continue to spend the user fees dollars? You know, if we get it down to a very comfortable level, why spend people's money when it's at a comfortable level? That's a
Yeah.
fair statement as well.
There's another part to that. I mean, at what point does removing I&I not benefit us in our treatment plant expenses?
Well, we'll get to that because I've prepared some graphs. So, all right, so the consensus is, yes, please put this on your list of to-dos to kind of start the process of, is this,
Well, just ask the lawyers. I mean, if the lawyers agree with
Yeah,
Peter,
right.
then it's
on
a
our radar?
non-starter, but I
No,
would
to
think that you
Wayne
could do
Fox.
it if
Wayne
Weston
Fox
was
Council.
doing it.
I would, honestly,
That was a
I'm
while ago.
a little bit ambivalent over how we do it. I just thought there was a direct relationship between expense and benefit there that we were missing. Or we could take it. All right, I keep losing my agenda.
No, I mean, I love the idea, I just don't know.
Projected billing method.
All right, item number 8. projected building limits.
No, we can skip that, we did it. We did it.
We did,
That was
yeah,
mine.
I guess you're right, we kind of did do it.
It was mine, so we,
So we,
just take it,
it was on there.
just take it as a good thing
We'll
and go
take it.
forward.
We've got a way to do it. Okay, so I guess we're on to the superintendent's report.
Okay.
Oh, you didn't want to go through the rest
Oh,
of
yeah,
the charts?
let me go through the charts, actually, yes, because the charts are, they were technically under 7. I lost track of that on the naming, where I was supposed to talk about them, but I thought these were super cool. So Ed gave me the spreadsheet,
Okay,
which is the data of how much total flow
yep,
Darien sends to Stanford, that's
Mhm.
column B. How much total flow is processed at Stanford's treatment plant, which would include both Stanford's flow and Darien's flow. What that is on a percentage basis, and then some other breakdowns from there. But so let's first talk about the percentage basis. So currently, the last 4 years have been 15.8%, 14%, 14.6%, 14.4%. So what that data told me is we're not close to getting to 12% yet. And it's probably going to take years of this I&I effort before we get there. So we're not losing any opportunity. So let's start to look at the charts. I think that'll be the most helpful. Chart 1 is a chart of our total flow to Stanford over time. So that would include both our usage and our I&I, everything we're sending down the pipes to Stanford. You'll notice a conspicuous spike in year 2019. Chart 2 is how much water our users are using. And that's the water meter data from Aquarian. That number, the most interesting part about it, which I expected to see, but I didn't see until I created it, is going down. So between 2014 and 2022, it's gone down by 7%. I would have expected that, more efficient toilets, more efficient appliances, et cetera, over time. Use of the actual water goes down.
Is 2021 high because of COVID and people being
I think
home
so.
and
I
using
think
their
that's a
water?
reasonable explanation.
Yeah.
More people were home more of the time, so the water use went up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So chart 3, I took the Aquarian water use out of our total flow. And this is our I&I problem. So you can see very clearly I&I is going up at a significant rate. It's actually 63% higher than it was in 2014. Now, all of these numbers should have a caveat on them. We weren't metering our Stanford flows from Heather and Lake until 2019. Now we meter all of our flows. So again, conspicuous spike in the year 2019. 4, I took Darien's flow out of Stanford's flow to the treatment plant. And although you look to Stanford and you say, oh, they're building all of these apartment buildings, the flow is not going up by a significant amount. 1, the apartment buildings are probably tighter and newer. But 2, if you add 1,300 people to 130,000 population, you're only adding 1%. But the other thing that's interesting is the spike in 2019 is a much smaller percentage of their total flow than it is our total flow. That spike in 2019 is much bigger on our side than it is on Stanford's side. So what is that spike? That's chart 5.
sounds like people are able to work from home.
Chart 5 maps Darien's I&I flow. so taking out the user flow, against the rainfall. Rainfall is in orange, our INI flow is in blue. So there is a kind of an amazing direct correlation between rainfall and INI. So that's how we know kind of the INI numbers that we're seeing are probably pretty accurate, because when we don't have a lot of rain, the INI goes down. When we do have a lot of rain, the INI goes up. So lots of rain in a year equals lots of INI flow. But again, you go back to chart 4, which is Stanford's pump. This shows you that their system is tighter than ours.
Wait a minute. Maybe I've lost my mind,
Yeah.
but just, well, didn't,
Hang on with us for a little longer.
yeah, but didn't COVID start in 2020? Go from Super Bowl 2020 to Super Bowl this year? 2019 was before COVID.
That's, yeah, that's right. That's inflow and infiltration. That's
Okay,
rainfall.
I'm just,
That's
Yeah.
rainfall.
we were talking about a spike in water.
Oh, no, the
usage in
spike was,
2019, so I-
no.
That was in water use.
What,
Yeah, water use.
Yeah, no, but what I believe Susan was referring to was the increase between 2020 and 2021.
This one right here.
This spike, the water use spike.
Well, 20,
Chart 2.
yeah, no, I'm trying to look for the numbers. The chart gets me a little confused. Because you have you threw the
Yeah, so chart 2.
median average there, and
Yeah,
it's
chart
not level.
2 was column G, or column F, Darien's water use.
Okay,
So you see a low in 2020 of 419
Yep.
million gallons, and then it peaks up, spikes up a little bit to 458. That's COVID. Our water use goes up
Yes.
by 10% in a year.
yep. But it had also come down
It starts to go down as as things start to return
8%
to normal a little
from the
bit.
year before.
Yeah, which I would think that seemed to be my experience of observing things. So, I don't know, I just thought these were,
Interesting.
yeah, so it's, water use is going down, and yes, Stanford's building apartment buildings, but it's not a great proportion of the population of the whole city. They have a very
Right.
tight system that's not letting in as much INI. And right now, our system appears to be much more susceptible to rainfall influence.
Well, if you have more rainfall, you're gonna have more sump pump activity also.
Exactly.
But why not in Stanford?
Because well, I'm guessing, it could be like a urban suburban difference, you know, a stacked building versus lots of single family homes. Like we have more miles of pipe per person than they do, because you have to lay more miles of pipe to get to single family residences than you do to get to the next.
Is all of Stanford sewer? No.
No, so.
They have septic up in the,
Yeah, north of the tracks, there's very little sewers.
yeah.
North of the tracks, north
Parkway.
of 95, 50.
But they're doing it right now.
They are putting some in areas that need sewers, that are like 10,000 square foot lots, and that those.
And are wet areas too.
Yeah, and they're low, yeah, it's very good that they're doing that. We want.
So they may end up with more INI, because they may end up with
No,
more
because it'll be
sump
new.
pumps. Well, that doesn't mean people won't put in a sump
Well, it'll be
Oh, well,
interesting.
some
So,
pumps, yeah.
I suppose if they're smart, well, if they're replacing someone's septic system, let's imagine that someone didn't have a sump pump going to their septic system.
No, they wouldn't do that.
Yeah, so they're connecting a sewer that probably didn't have a sump pump in it. And I guess if I was doing that work, I would make sure that if I was connecting a pipe to the sewer system, that they didn't have a sump pump before I connected them.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know, I thought that was, that showed why we're focusing on I&I. And it also, one of the reasons I went through that exercise was as we talked to Stanford about
How many hand was that?
re-upping for the next 5 years, was how close are we to 12%? How hard should we push it?
What have I contributed tonight?
I kind of got to the conclusion from the numbers is, let's push it in 5 years when we actually are negotiating at points of strength where we're, well,
I'll take care of it.
going lower.
How long are our contracts for?
So we basically have a 10-year contract or a 5-year contract that can be re-upped for 5 years.
Okay.
But at the end of that, I don't think we can just re-up again. I think we have to.
I think we have to
Right
sit
before
down
Ed
and
leaves,
we
he
have
has
to
to
sit down
renegotiate.
negotiate.
Yeah, so.
Are you leaving? Before Ed leaves, is that what you said?
No. I'm here for at least another 6 years.
There we go. So you got we got one more
Sorry, I didn't mean
negotiation.
Yeah, one
All right.
It was too easy, it was just like hanging there.
Um,
Yeah, but it's also, the other thought is if you mention it now, they might
And
be
he's
more
going.
apt to give it because they think you're not gonna get there. But
he's
if
gonna-
you're
and he's
starting to
gonna
get
mention
there.
We're getting to the director's report.
I'm just read you this.
Oh,
Okay, item 9.
You're very
Any
optimistic.
further question or discussion on item 7 and those graphs and charts?
No.
Now, for
I'm
me,
not optimistic. Just
Uh,
figure it out.
Item 9, superintendent's report. And our full and complete,
Old
I
Kings
want to get back
Highway.
to 1-hour meetings, just saying. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon.
Who done
Old Kings
that
Highway
with me?
pipelining project that we, sorry. Everything is done except for the asphalt ceiling around the manhole, so we're gonna close out the project. We have some retainage left. And the remaining funds will go back to the town. So we're in good shape. We're just waiting for the weather to change and then we'll be done with that. The one other item that is outstanding, there's a 1-year warranty inspection for the epoxy and lining of the manholes. So they'll come back a year from now. I'll still have the money in account. Once they're done, I pay them for their inspections, making sure everything is
Oh, cool.
still good.
They stand behind their product then.
Yep. Phase 2 sanitary, we're about 75% complete on the design. And when I get back, the end of April, we have another meeting set up to see if we can get this thing out to bid. So it's moving along quite well. Woo-hoo! We do have a couple spot repairs to do, we have some manholes to find, but we're in the process of getting that all set up, and this way, things are ready for the contractor to move right in and do his job. The Woodway and Hoyt, Darren?
Woodway and Hoyt, we had contact with the owner of Hoyt Street, the owner on Hoyt Street. We still have not had any contact with the person on Woodway, who is the person who's responsible for submitting the survey.
Thank you, sir. Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, the lady from Hoyt, the woman from Hoyt came in, she was the one who came in here. The other
She's the one who
person
came
was-
in, and she, the commission decided to release the CO for the
Yes.
pool house. And we're still waiting on Woodway who is responsible for doing the survey.
Okay.
Thank you for continuing to track that.
The D, Save the Sound, CMOM and SSES, I've heard nothing back since submission, so I'm under the now firm impression that we're good to go with both of them, with no comments. I'll
So,
let you know if that changes.
No news is good news?
Yes.
Lindsay's coming in maybe the next meeting if the schedule works out to give us an overview of the CMOM.
She is planning on it,
Okay.
if you'll have her.
And we're
We'll send an
throwing a couple
invitation
extra
again.
questions that are, one of the questions I posed to you in an offline conversation was this question of areas that flood and the impact of surface flooding on top of our sewer manholes. And there's a couple of ways to get around that. You could have those kind of saucer-like trays.
I know what you're talking about, I forgot the name, there's a,
Yeah, which
Yeah.
if you have pressure from the top, it kind of sets a gasket, so
yeah,
water
it's
can't direct.
plastic, it's like a
Can't
black
direct inflow.
polyplastic.
There's
Like a storm
also,
protector or something like that for the.
there's
manholes.
also a watertight lid,
Yep.
gasketed, bolted. Nothing's coming through that. In some of our sensitive areas, like right outside, in the past, we've been hesitant to put a bolted manhole in for concern of any surcharge pressure that might create if there's a lot of water, clean water getting in the system from elsewhere. And so, again, the hope is we reduce that clean water load, and then does it make sense to put in watertight manhole lids?
We're doing that with this project right now because a lot of the areas are in wetland areas.
Okay.
Some of them are in the 100-year flood zone. So we've had that discussion, and we always come back to the field out here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where do you want the sewage to come out of, right? I mean, I can watertight everything back up the system. We can reduce the I&I significantly. But for whatever reason, we have a large storm you know, the belts and suspenders say, give me a place to relieve myself.
That's safe.
And let's
So-
not make it inside someone's house.
I was
My
gonna say,
dad
what
was,
happened?
my dad was a plumber, and we had a house, still do, on Mansfield Avenue. And it's on a steep downhill away from Mansfield. Houses, the driveway goes whoop. And first floor lower than the road. So outside the foundation where the lateral went out, he put in basically a vented clean out. So clean out came up, gooseneck at the top to grade, and then a backflow preventer here. So if the lateral ever backed up and started putting pressure, it would discharge at a safe location that wasn't the first floor of our house. So taking that engineering concept, we could intentionally have these vented goosenecks higher than, you know, the manhole lids, but lower than sensitive connections.
I have no problem looking into that. That's not a bad suggestion.
Yep.
That's making sure we put those goosenecks away from everything, right? A lot of these manholes are in the middle of the fields, but yeah, no, both philosophies work the same thing, right? Which is, don't let the sewage get in the house. Let's have it discharge away from people, away from personal property, and, you know, yeah, we're gonna have an overflow, but most likely it's gonna overflow to a lot of water, because at that time, you're gonna figure that we're getting a very large
Well, 'cause
storm.
as much, even if we are successful, we get rid of half the I&I in our system, and we put in these watertight lids, so we don't have a lot of direct inflow during the times of these massive floods, you know, you could still get a fatberg, you know, you could still get a pipe break, you know, so you still need a point of relief, even if everything else is functioning, because there's always the anomaly.
Absolutely.
And how many of these points of relief do you need?
Well,
I
in
mean,
areas,
I'm getting confused again here,
well,
so.
in areas where you don't have
Don't do that.
flood,
Yeah.
right, the point of relief is the manhole lid.
All right, but where it happened up there, was that where you would have expected there to be a backup?
At Danny's?
Yeah.
No.
No, okay, so where's your point of
Oh,
relief?
no.
Well, the point of relief was the manhole lid, just came out
No,
the
but
road.
we were trying to look for a point of relief that's not going to be.
That would be where we chose to put a watertight manhole lid.
So you would, I'm sorry, so it would be okay for there to be a point of relief at Danny's? One of your
Danny's.
Well, it's
little.
not okay, it's not okay anywhere,
Where
we're
we
trying for
talking?
zero.
Danny Cycle up here?
Yeah, not,
Yeah.
No, that had nothing to do with pressure there.
Oh,
The pipe collapsed
Yeah.
from hydrogen sulfide eating the pipe.
Okay, so that's not the issue?
no.
Oh, okay.
You gotta imagine standing out in the middle of this field where there's a couple manholes. They used to overflow.
Oh, I know that.
So.
I've lived here a while.
What we've done is we've locked them so you don't see that happening anymore.
Ah.
But.
But if it gets overflowed, then it has to go somewhere.
It has to go somewhere. So Craig's idea is, hey, we could put something that, yeah, it's gonna do it, we'll see it right away, but it keeps it from backing up into a home. Because I've locked everything down now, that water backup, it has to go somewhere. The pressure has to go somewhere.
Is it gonna back up at
If-
the
if-
pump station?
It's backing up from the pump station.
No, it's backing up
Well,
the
it's-
post road and the trunk line is becoming a storage tank. Because you have stagnant water sitting there, building up until it gets to a level where it would back up into a house is what he's afraid of.
Well, I
When
think-
everything is underwater, everything's underwater, that's the concern. And we're trying to keep our system to still only have that domestic waste discharge in it and not get the flooded. And the solution, the easy solution, is watertight lids, gasketed and bolted.
But then somewhere you're gonna put this little,
If you have a problem in the system, you don't want to create a surcharge pressure that, I mean, and it could be, it doesn't have to be a gooseneck, it could just be the manhole up the road 4 feet.
Yeah,
And that's the point of relief that doesn't get a bolted lid.
that's your factor of safety, that's your safety valve.
Yeah,
Yep.
your emergency spillway.
And do you have an idea of how many of these you need?
We're counting them as we go, that's what the part of the
Safety valves?
design is.
I'm
Oh,
just-
no, safety
so,
valves, no, I
let's
can't tell
be
you.
clear, I asked this as a question under
Yeah.
9D.
No, no,
This is
I'm
not a
just
policy we
trying to
have or a design that's
Okay,
done.
I'm
No,
just
we're
trying to
not- we're not-
understand the whole
It's,
system.
I think, I don't want to speak for Craig, but I think what he's trying to get at is, hey, are you looking at where we get water in, protecting those manholes?
Yes.
Okay, when you do that and you lock everything up nice and tight, what's gonna happen? Right, now we've created no place for the water to go in, and if it starts to back up, we've eliminated where it could go out to relieve itself.
I mean, look, I want nothing more than to have gasketed watertight lids,
Oh.
but I also want nothing more than to create a surcharge problem.
That's
In
correct.
someone's house.
Yeah.
And each situation has to be looked at.
Yeah.
So.
But going back to 7 Sedgwick, where we know it's gonna go underwater when the Goodwives River floods over there,
Yeah, so that's
that one
that's a good
that's been
location.
sealed?
Those manholes, they have the cups in them right now, the storm protectors in them now.
okay.
But when we get over there, do that section, there's probably a couple I'm going to lock down. Then there'll be the ones
And
in
I
close
guess-
proximity or within the 100-year floodplain. That used to be a requirement in Stanford.
Yeah.
So here, I'm gonna start to institute that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically, it's a part of our I&I abatement
Yes.
program to evaluate the vulnerability of a manhole and the appropriateness of a watertight lid.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that was.
And that's a good reason to have that I&I fee, that these people who are gonna suddenly be adding thousands and thousands of gallons.
So we can continue
to the
the
system.
abatement program.
Right.
Yeah, and
And while it might be another fee, or you could tack it on to the connection fee, I would like to
Nope,
see
too late.
where you come up with the numbers.
fast.
But
Oh, no, I don't take papers on the day.
you can staff,
This is just a nitrogen credit. You
Oh.
don't wanna read them.
I can get that.
Oh,
from
look at
the-
that, top of the list.
I can get this from the source. I can call it Mr. Podolka.
It's not
You
huge.
can.
I have him right here on my.
I feel like we've
Yeah.
had bigger ones in the past.
We have, and that's what I wanted to show you. I wanted to bring your attention. This is item E.
Okay?
We're at
I'm seeing it now.
Okay.
We might have an F too.
Bill was nice enough to send it to me on Monday. So just so you know, we had
So
budgeted
E is nitrogen credit
Credits.
information from 2022.
Stanford WPCA nitrogen credits.
But I think they used to also pay what they charged. Now they pay a minuscule amount of what they charge.
So just so you can see the impact to our budget. Last year, it was $320,000. This
To
year,
us or to Stanford?
to Stanford,
Yeah, okay.
which we saw
12.
basically 45K.
Yeah, okay.
This actual year, which is gonna actually impact our next invoice, it's 128, around to 130,000, which is a pretty good size reduction.
18.
And now it's 18K
To us.
to us. So we see a hit to the budget of 27,000.
Okay.
Not significant, but something to look at.
Okay.
All right, not, it's not fall out of your chair, $200,000, but it's 27
It looks like
grand.
we're gonna lose $27,000 in nitrogen credits that we had assumed in the budget.
So let's just hope, Stanford WPCA decides not to spend 27 grand someplace else or something, that we can see a savings.
That's why you track this, and that's why we appreciate it.
So that was nitrogen, and the other part of the Stanford WPCA update, item E, was the 12% request, and I got feedback from Bill saying that they don't want to consider that reduction in the contract at this time.
Oh,
And
we asked, and they
we
said.
did.
Okay, but we asked.
Okay.
He did give a long thing here. I will send this to you if you'd like.
Sure. He took the time to write it, I'll take the time to read it.
Under the superintendent's report, just talking about administrative processes, would you, I guess, like to outline how we're going to handle referrals from P and Z on the next application?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, I can take a
And let's learn from
stab at it.
any missteps that we had on the last one.
I can do it. I will say that I want to be very careful about when to bring the commission in on a project and where to bring them in, which topics, if we feel that there's a capacity issue, should we bring that in here to you immediately? If we feel that there's no capacity issue or any issues at all, does it have to come to you folks? Does it need to come to you at all? Does you keep it at staff level? As far as, that I'm going to struggle with, but I will go through the processes I think it should be done.
We'll talk about it.
And how it kind of worked out this time. Because I think as much as it's a new process for me, not really new, but, you know, an updated process, if you will, you folks had some good questions that put out, you know, during the last couple of meetings about what are we going to do if we find X? What's our next step?
Yeah.
And how do we handle it?
Yeah.
So. But I will give it my best shot.
But it sounds like you all are saying that we have capacity in the system. We have a lot of capacity in the system.
I will tell you that the dry flow, and I say dry flow because I want to say, I'd love to get to this point, but our dry flow at Stony Brook is 1.2 MGD. It's
And by the way, dry flow includes groundwater infiltration.
Yeah.
This is just not
It's just not the rain.
Not rainwater, our,
And our average flow, you know, middle of the night, it's 0.5. Middle of the day at peak, it's about 1.1, 1.2, consistently.
And the pumps can do 4.8.
and this is our most
did.
stressed pump station?
Our most,
Stressed.
Stressed? Oh, near water's that.
Oh, near water
Yeah,
is
well,
not
that handles much more flow.
Oh, okay.
But this happens to be in a very,
It's in and of itself, it's in a flood-prone area.
yeah, it's in a location that it needs to be monitored and watched on a regular basis.
And we couldn't move it because that would be,
Craig would like me to move it. He wants me to raise it about 5-6 feet
I
in
do.
the air,
I do.
which would get everything up out of the floodplain.
That's exactly what I want.
And every time I see the resiliency grants that are coming out, and I just want to, I'd love to hire someone and just throw an application and see if they would fund us lifting this up. It'd be multi-million dollars to do it, but that would be a protection that I could live with.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, to me, there's only one future for Nearwater and Stony Brook, 2 pump stations. And that future is to accept the flood risk analyses that say they're gonna get flooded at some point.
especially near water.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna have to make it look like a lighthouse, you'd have to go that
Yeah.
high.
yeah, yeah,
I got a drawing, I'll give it to you,
of the lighthouse.
of a lighthouse at the pump
Pump
station
station?
Well,
in Greenwich.
So, I don't know, we need, well, what I would say is, and I brought it up before, and I'll continue to bring it up, is we need a real plan within the next 6 years, but hopefully a lot sooner. All right, any further
Real-
questions on the superintendent's report?
Couple quick ones,
Yep.
and first one I'm sure is just nothing. 246 Norotan.
No.
Pipe sag under the front porch. Nothing?
They went out and fixed it.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry. No, they went out and fixed that. And the guy went out there the next day to fix it.
Okay,
My conversation with Anthony was that.
all right, good. I mean, I just want to give him kudos, because he came here and he was willing to fix it, and that's one. Two, now,
I'm sorry,
Oh.
I'm taking that back, wrong address. 246 Norone Avenue.
Yes.
As of second week in March, we had no update from them yet, and Tony was following up.
okay,
That's why I write it down, I guess. Sorry.
A dull pencil is better
Okay.
than the sharpest mind.
I was gonna say, that's why they put erasers on pencils.
So I'll follow up with that again this month.
Okay, and now that it's, well, not even warmer, but now that I can walk further, I walked from my house and stopped over at the Stony Brook Pump Station. And I'm assuming that the sandbags were left, you know, so that you're ready for a flood at a moment's notice, but they've disintegrated, so now it's just sand.
Yeah, we have a contractor coming in to start building up some of the resiliency around the building right now.
Okay.
And
Does that
he's gonna
include,
use some of the sand with the concrete.
does that include a shed roof in the back where the plywood is?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah, we're elevating some of the window wells with real concrete
Yep.
instead of sandbags.
Covering some of the window
Covering some of
wells.
them, and then we have
do
a
have the
barrier
door
for the door.
protections. We did reach out to Eversource with regards to
Transformers.
transformers. They were hesitant to continue talking a lot about relocating it, so we asked them what could we do around it, and they gave us some dimensions that we can use to protect it, quote unquote, temporarily, until they find another location for it. So we're doing that too, and we'll be coming in and building that, walls up around that.
But this all goes back to Ida, which was probably the worst flood in the area of the Stony Brook Pump Station that we ever had. And, you know, the water was tickling the transformers.
Yeah.
Now we do have a generator. But
sorry, I was walking by, I had to stop.
No.
My other question is,
I gotta put the sign back up for no trespassing, but we'll get that up there soon.
that was leading me to my other question, should the gate be closed?
In a
Strong
perfect
enough.
world, yes.
Okay.
But we're in and out of that station quite often,
Okay.
so for the most part, no one generally bothers that. We do lock up the building, no one's messed around with that. But if you like, I'll start instituting them locking that.
No,
up.
I'm just,
Though
I
the
don't,
police do sit in there and do traffic speeding from that
That's good.
location
We
too,
like that.
so.
if they're there on a regular basis, then there's no need. I
When were
just-
you there?
when
What
was
time
it?
of the day?
Probably about 4:30
On a weekday?
on a weekday, yep. Walked in there, walked all around the building with my two dogs, took notice, and then I was like,
take them
oh.
down.
Yeah, I was waiting for the cop to come in. I was like, go ahead, because they would start growling on him. It would be ugly. But I just figured I could just flash my credentials and be all, good to go.
Yeah.
Sewer commission badge, and I'd be all set.
Do you have one of those?
Yeah,
You got the same thing down at near water too. That gate is generally open because the
Probably got
plumbing's
it.
going.
You got
well,
one
it's
of
a
those?
little
I
tougher
don't
because
know
of
the other
next to the
ones.
beach.
Everybody used to
There,
see I got
that's
one.
the difference,
get it.
especially on the
Piece of paper.
weekend, when no one's around. Then that's a tougher thing there. But I didn't realize the police ducked in there. If they duck in there, it's fine.
Hang on, we're coming to you.
Okay, I'm good.
We're good with the superintendent's report. Any new business? Peter?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second. I'm sorry. All those in favor? 7-0.
Reese seconded.
1, 2, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Channel 79. We are done.